Chapter 845. I nominate Zhongxian to be the principal, as he would have to expose the existence of the Library of Heaven's Path in order to explain how he managed to tame those otherworldly demonic puppets. Zhongxian had planned to have Yangxian make an appearance to save the day. Thus, through his mental connection with his clone, he had the latter appear in Yangxian's form. Zhongxian had initially only intended to have Yangxian scare the others just a little, but who could have known that he would blow the entire matter way out of proportion? Looking at the wreckage around him, Zhongxian slapped his forehead in frustration. All his clone had needed to do was prove that he wasn't an otherworldly demon, but that fellow actually turned the Elder Hall, along with many other crucial buildings, into rubble. As for how everything had happened, the powerful aura, which his clone seemed to emanate, was from Vicious, naturally. That fellow had once said that as long as he devoured Kongsha's personal handwriting, he would be able to turn his aura that was drenched with killing intent like all other otherworldly demons into a purer and more orthodox form, similar to that of a master teacher. The collapse of the Teacher Acknowledgement Hall was probably a result of the aura coming from Kongsha's personal handwriting. While Kongsha had yet to reach his peak when he left behind those words, there was no way that the will of any master teacher would dare to stand against him. As for the aura of a celestial master teacher, as his clone's soul had come from his, he had also been recognized by the heavens. On top of that, Vicious was around to assist, so they managed to pull it off easily. And the final disappearance was naturally not teleportation either. While the crowd had been being distracted by their own fear, Zhongxian had managed to slip them into the myriad ant hive nest discreetly. Entering a folded space was similar to entering another world. Even with the spiritual perception of a Saint Tuden expert, it was impossible to find any traces of them anywhere, thus creating the illusion of teleportation. It was fortunate that they had managed to pull it off perfectly, but considering the destruction left in their wake, wasn't this going too far? Since this was only a small conflict, Zhongxian had intended to just erase all doubts of him being an otherworldly demon from the minds of the others, but this. He could see deep fear in the eyes on him. Just as he was conflicted as to what he should do under such circumstances, Musha suddenly stepped forward, clasped his fist, and bowed. "Senior uncle." Zhongxian was slightly stunned for a moment before he responded with a slight nod. There is no need to stand on ceremony. Since Yangxian was his grand teacher, as the direct disciple of Yangxian, there was no mistake with Musha addressing him as such. "Senior uncle." Lu Feng's lips twitched, and he nearly fainted on the spot. Musha was a 7-star master teacher, so in terms of seniority, Lu Feng could be considered to be a generation younger than the other party. If the other party was calling Zhongxian senior uncle, didn't that mean that his seniority before Zhongxian had dropped yet another generation, putting him on equal standing as the latter's grand student? It was just a moment ago that he had still been a junior. Would the other party be calling him a child next? What the heck was going on? Not only did Lu Feng suffer a heavy blow from this, Dongxin's vision had also darkened upon hearing those words. Previously, Long Tsungyue had said that going by the current trend, the next one of them to provoke Zhongxian could just end up as his great-grandstudent. Back then, she hadn't thought much of it, thinking that it was impossible. But this. As a direct disciple of Lu Feng, if her teacher's seniority was that of Zhongxian's grandstudent, wouldn't that make her his great-grandstudent? Of the great 4 student factions in the Master Teacher Academy, Hu Yaro was the first to challenge Zhongxian, and she ended up becoming his apprentice. Xue Zhenyang was the second, and he became his grandstudent. And she, being the third, became his great-grandstudent. Tears wouldn't stop flowing down Dongxin's cheeks. If she had known that this would happen, she would never have gotten involved in this trouble. Now, she would have to call even Hu Yaro her grand teacher. This. Pavilion Master Mo and the others were also at a loss after hearing Musha calling Zhongxian senior uncle. Paying no heed to the bizarre expressions of the crowd, Zhongxian asked Musha, "With this, there shouldn't be anyone who still suspects me of being an otherworldly demon, right?" Musha hurriedly shook his head. "Of course not. You are Yangshe's student, and Yangshe is a celestial master teacher. There is no way a student of a celestial master teacher could be an otherworldly demon." The other master teachers in the area also hastily agreed. Since this matter is cleared, this hearing should be over. I can take my leave now, right? Zhongxian continued. Of course. Mu Shi nodded hurriedly. All right, I will bid you all farewell now, Zhongxian said. Given the current state of affairs, even if he didn't say a word, the Master Teacher Academy would still certainly make sure that Lu Feng was punished severely for his actions. As the most senior figure in the room, there was no need for him to lower his standing to deal with a mere grad student. If he really insisted on dealing with Lu Feng, the prestige that he had just built up using his clone's disguise would be diminished. Furthermore, the reputation of the Master Teacher Academy was at stake here, so it wouldn't be good for a student like him to get involved in the matter. It would be best to leave it to the school heads to deal with the matter as they deemed fit. But just as Zhongxian was just about to leave, School Head Mo stepped forward and said, Zhongshe, please wait a moment. Is there still a problem? Zhongxian asked politely. School Head Mo had granted him plenty of help ever since his enrollment, so he had a high opinion of the latter. Even in the hearing just a moment ago, before Yang Shi made an appearance, he had been active in speaking up for him. It is like this. Mu Shi once said that anyone who finds Senior Byzantium Alios will be made the next principal. Since you were the one who found Senior Byzantium Alios, and you have even become his master, I feel that it will only be right for you to take on the responsibility as the next principal of our academy. After saying those words, School Head Mo turned to look at the others and asked, what do the rest of you think of this matter? Ever since the old principal disappeared, the academy had slowly become divided, and troubles had emerged one after another. It was imperative that someone in the academy had to step up to take hold of the situation, and Zhongxian seemed to be the ideal candidate for that. While he might be lacking in his cultivation, he made up for that through his deep comprehension in the other supporting occupations. Besides, he had Senior Byzantium Alios as his tamed beast. With such powerful backing, who would dare question his authority? I was thinking of making the same suggestion. Zhao Bingshu nodded in agreement. I have no qualms with Zhongshi becoming our next principal, Wei Ranxue replied. I think that Zhong Laroche is the most suitable candidate to become the principal as well. Jiang Qingqi nodded. I agree. School head Xu Changqing of the martial arts school hesitated for a moment before nodding. Wang Ying and the others were guest elders of their school. If their teacher were to become the principal, they would surely be willing to devote more time to imparting knowledge to the student. In just a few moments, half of the 10 great master teachers had already expressed their support for the motion. Senior Uncle is a student of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy himself, and he also fulfills most of the conditions required to become the principal. If he is willing to take on this responsibility, that will truly be a blessing for the academy. Mu Shi's eyes lit up, and he nodded. I agree to this motion as well. His main mission for coming to the Master Teacher Academy was to nominate and confirm the next principal. While Senior Uncle might still be young, and his cultivation is still weak, he has a strong backer who is more than sufficient to make up for his deficiencies. Besides, Senior Uncle is also an exceptional genius. Most likely, he will be able to rise up to the role in just a few years' time, and under his leadership, the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy could be brought to unprecedented greatness. Mu Shi turned his sights to the remaining 5 school heads. What about the rest of you? This. Lu Feng and Chen Chengxuan glanced at one another with extreme reluctance. They would have vetoed the motion immediately under normal circumstances, but considering their current plight and Zhongxian's newfound status. Since even Mu Shi is in support of this matter, I have no objections either, the head of the painter school said. I have no objections, too, the head of the celestial designer school said. I am of the same opinion as the others. Zhong Ding-chun, the head of the physician school, nodded. Eventually, Lu Feng and Chen Chengxuan had no choice but to relent as well. All right, we agree to the motion. They had no choice in this matter. With 8 of the 10 great master teachers in support of this motion, even if they were to voice their disagreements, nothing would change. With all of the school heads in support of this motion, School Head Mo was just about to make the official declaration of the results when a deep, resounding voice suddenly sounded. One of the requirements to become the principal of the Master Teacher Academy is to be a 6-star master teacher. Zhongshi hasn't met this requirement yet. I disagree with this matter. The Golden Origin Cauldron objected. As the guardian saint artifact of the Master Teacher Academy, its position was higher than even that of the school heads. Naturally, it had a say in the matter as well. Senior Golden Origin Cauldron, even though Zhongshe isn't a 6-star Master Teacher yet, given his astounding talent, it won't be long before he successfully clears the examination, School Head Mo said. The others nodded in agreement at School Head Mo's words. They had witnessed the heaven-defying talent of that young man personally, and the copious destruction all over the Master Teacher Academy served as testimony to that. If even a genius like him couldn't pass the 6-star Master Teacher examination, who else could? You may be right, but have you all forgotten about the selection 3 months' time? The Golden Origin Cauldron asked. 3 months' time? The crowd frowned, unsure of what the Golden Origin Cauldron was referring to. It seems like all of you have really forgotten about it. 3 months from now will be the Centennial Combat Master Selection, the Golden Origin Cauldron exclaimed. Combat Master Selection? Now that you mention it, it has indeed been 100 years since the previous selection. The Qingyuan Conferred Empire's Combat Master Hall only conducts a selection exercise once every 100 years. I wasn't a school head yet during the previous selection, so I don't really recall it. The 4 great academies under Qingyuan Conferred Academy will be gathering together for the selection. It will be a huge event. I had forgotten about that as well. If Zhongshe fails to become a 6-star Master Teacher within the next 3 months, we won't stand a chance against the other 3 academies. Everyone fell silent. Combat Master Selection? Zhongxian asked doubtfully. He didn't think that he would remain in Hongyuan Empire for too long, so it didn't matter to him whether he became the principal of the Master Teacher Academy or not. However, judging from everyone's tone, it seemed like they had some apprehensions regarding the Combat Master Selection. I believe Zhongshe should have heard of Combat Masters before? School Head Mo asked. Zhongxian nodded in response. The Combat Master Hall could be considered an offshoot of the Master Teacher Pavilion, serving primarily as its offensive wing. Combat Masters were considered Master Teachers as well, but they need not be skilled in teaching nor did they have to take on supporting occupations. All that was required of them was to be sufficiently strong to clear the respective examinations to obtain their Master Teacher rank. Each Combat Master was known to possess the capability of fighting with opponents with higher cultivation levels than them. Even among the powerful Master Teachers, they could be considered experts. Back then, when he was in Huanyu Empire, he had once been suspected of being a Combat Master on one occasion. The Master Teachers of the Combat Master Hall are famed for their overwhelming strength, and most regard it as an honor to join their ranks, School Head Mo explained. Once every century, the Combat Master Hall will select fresh blood from the various academies to fill their ranks, and the next selection happens to be in 3 months' time. 3 months. That's right. In 3 months' time, the 4 academies will gather together for the selection. However, due to the limited slots, the principals of the 4 academies will be first competing in a duel to decide on the allocation of slots to each academy first. School Head Mo said awkwardly, if Zhongshe becomes the principal, you will have to participate in the principal's duel. Given your current strength, I fear that you might not be able to hold your ground against the others. As principals of Master Teacher Academies, the opponents Zhongshen might face would be 6-star Pinnacle or even 7-star Master Teachers. Given Zhongshe's talent, there was no doubt that he could surpass the other principals if given sufficient time, but the duel was in 3 months' time. I see. Zhongshen nodded in realization. It was no wonder everyone was worried. He was currently only at Ethereal Treading Realm primary stage, which would put him at a fatal disadvantage against the other principals. Actually, there is no need to worry. If I am not mistaken, Zhong Laoshe already has 5 supporting occupations at 6-star rank. As long as he earns 1 more, he will have cleared the supporting occupation prerequisite for the 6-star Master Teacher examination. I think it is possible to make it within 3 months. Jiang Qingqin interjected. Currently, the 6-star supporting occupations that Zhongshe had were blacksmith, physician, apothecary, terpsichore, and demonic tunist. He was still lacking another one to clear the supporting occupation prerequisite for the 6-star Master Teacher examination. Given the ridiculous rate which he learned at, Getting another supporting occupation up to 6-star within 3 months shouldn't be a problem. Chapter 846. Principal Zhong. After all, Jiang Qingqin had personally witnessed the rate at which Zhong Xian learned. He had still been completely ignorant the first day, but the following day, his capability as a demonic tunist abruptly soared to 7-star. Considering that, it shouldn't take him too long to master another supporting occupation. I am not worried about his supporting occupations but his cultivation. Zhong Shi is currently only at perfect harmonization realm, but the minimum requirement to take the 6-star examination is to reach chrysalis realm pinnacle, Zhao Bingshu said. 5-star low tier, high tier, and pinnacle corresponded to cosmos bridge realm, perfect harmonization realm, and ethereal treading realm. In order to take the 6-star master teacher examination, one's cultivation had to be chrysalis realm pinnacle at the minimum. Back then, when Zhong Shi clashed with Yushu, he had exposed his strength, perfect harmonization realm pinnacle. It was impressive for a freshman, but he was still 2 realms away from becoming a 6-star master teacher. To progress through 2 realms within 3 months. One could say that it was nearly impossible. Actually, when I went out a few days ago, I accidentally made a breakthrough, so my cultivation is currently at ethereal treading realm, Zhong Xian said. Accidentally? Everyone widened their eyes in shock. Others had to put in a huge amount of effort while expending many valuable treasures in order to reach ethereal treading realm, and yet, you claim that you reached it accidentally? On top of that, you still dare to say it as if you have been wronged. Can you be more serious? This is an important matter we are speaking of. In truth, they had wronged Zhong Xian. It was indeed true that he had made the breakthrough unintentionally, and he was frustrated by the matter. You made the breakthrough to ethereal treading realm? But different from the frustrated and stifled expressions of the others, school head Mo froze, and his mouth suddenly began twitching. When Zhong Shi first participated in the entrance examination, I remember that his cultivation was only at consonant spirit realm pinnacle. It was to save a group of students that he made the breakthrough to Cosmos Bridge realm in the midst of the examination. As the invigilator, he had kept tabs on the happenings of the examination so as to source out talented students which the academy could devote resources to grooming. According to what he'd heard, Zhong Xian had forcefully raised his cultivation by an entire realm just so to save his fellow peers from the encirclement they were in. He had lamented after hearing the news as such forceful and abrupt breakthroughs tended to leave hidden traumas within one's body, limiting one's future progress. This was also why he had advised Zhong Xian to take note of this matter and make sure to stabilize his cultivation well. But before he knew it, the other party was suddenly at ethereal treading realm. It has been less than 20 days since the entrance examination, right? Someone amid the crowd muttered. Everyone hurriedly turned their gazes to the young man in horror, as if they were staring at a monster. To advance from transcendent mortal 5-dan consonant spirit realm to 8-dan ethereal treading realm in slightly more than half a month. That was nearly 3 whole realms. Are you sure you aren't some renowned expert concealing your cultivation to toy with us? Even cultivation impartation couldn't possibly be as fast as that, right? Don't you need to reinforce your cultivation? Don't you need to spend some time digesting and musing over the intricacies of each cultivation realm? Just as they were feeling frenzied over the matter, they suddenly heard Zhong Xian sighing deeply, and with an embarrassed look, he said, "Indeed. I have been spending too much time on advancing my supporting occupations that I wasn't able to find much time to cultivate, so my progress has been slow." In truth, he had been intending to sweep through the 10 schools within 10 days and spend an additional 6 more striving for Saint Realm 1 Dan, thus graduating within half a month. But more than half a month had passed, and he was only at ethereal treading realm primary stage. Additionally, he had only mastered 5 supporting occupations as well. He was embarrassed by his incapability. Hearing those words, the crowd nearly spurted blood. The heck? You call this slow? If your pace is considered slow, then what do you call spending several decades just to raise our cultivation by 1 stage? Also, wipe that embarrassment off your face. The ones who should be embarrassed are us. What made things worse was that despite the ridiculousness of Zhong Xian's words, they could tell that he wasn't lying, deepening the trauma they had just suffered. Ever since the other party enrolled in the academy, He had spent 7 days to master 5 supporting occupations, achieving proficiency levels surpassing even those of the heads of the respective schools, causing pandemonium in his wake. Not only so, he even had the time to conduct lectures and establish the influential Xianxian faction. Despite all he had done, he was still able to find time to make the breakthrough from Cosmos Bridge Realm Pinnacle to Perfect Harmonization Realm Pinnacle. If he had devoted his time to just cultivating in itself, forget it, let's not think about it anymore. It will only make us feel worse anyway. In comparison to the other party, their rate of cultivation was indeed not only slow. It was as if they suffered from a complete lack of talent. As stifled as they were, recalling the unfathomable expert the other party had as a teacher, they could only accept what was before them. Incredible talent paired with an unparalleled teacher. If the other party were to be on the same level as them, that would be truly embarrassing. He would be unworthy of his title as a genius. After a long moment of silence, one of the elders spoke up. Given Zhongshi's capability, reaching 6-star within 3 months shouldn't be a problem for him. I think so, too. Words of agreement soon rippled through the group. 3 months wasn't a long time for a cultivator, it would be gone in one period of seclusion. But to the fellow before them, they dared not think what he could achieve within this limited period of time. Perhaps, he might even be able to make the breakthrough to Saint Realm. Then, since we have come to a consensus, let's not hesitate any longer. We shall conduct the inauguration ceremony in 3 days then, Musha declared with a wave of his hand. The inauguration of the principal of the Master Teacher Academy was a huge affair with great implications for the surrounding Tier 1 empires and Master Teacher pavilions. The reason it was set for 3 days later was to allow for sufficient preparation time for the ceremony and to invite the guests. Besides, they had to fix the Elder Hall and the Teacher Acknowledgement Hall first. Otherwise, if others were to see the tattered state the Great Master Teacher Academy had been reduced to, they would probably laugh themselves to death. Having decided on the matter, the others quickly nodded in agreement. While the Golden Origin Cauldron did have a vote in the matter as well, given that even Musha had expressed his support for Zhongxian, it had no choice but to go along with the majority decision as well. In any case, its standing wouldn't change regardless of who became the principal, so there was no need for it to go all out to oppose Zhongxian either. Seeing how the group had come to a decision without him, Zhongxian's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. In your discussion, deciding whether I should be the principal or not, shouldn't you have asked for my opinion as well? Perhaps noticing Zhongxian's thoughts, the Byzantium Alios beast said, Master, becoming the principal might be a heavy responsibility, but it comes with many privileges as well. For one, you can access the facilities of the school, the libraries and such freely. Hearing those words, Zhongxian's eyes lit up. If he could gain access to all of the books in the academy freely, becoming the new principal was indeed nothing much. After the confirmation of this matter, the group discussed, for another 2 hours, how best to allocate the various responsibilities for the preparations of the inauguration ceremony. Nearing the end of the meeting, school head Mo turned to Zhongxian and said apologetically, Zhongshe, until the inauguration ceremony is over, we can't bring you into the principal's residence. Thus, we will have to ask you to remain in your manor for a while longer. Even though this matter was already approved by the 10 great master teachers and Mu Shi, Zhongxian still couldn't be considered the official principal until the inauguration ceremony was over. Thus, he couldn't use most of the authority he had as the principal just yet. Understanding this, Zhongxian nodded in response. In any case, it was just 3 days. It would pass in a flash. In the discussion, it was decided that Zhongxian should focus his attention on raising his cultivation and clearing the 6-star master teacher examination, so most of the responsibilities of the principal would be distributed among the 10 great master teachers for the time being. Naturally, upon hearing those words, Zhongxian heaved a huge sigh of relief. At that point, he suddenly recalled another matter he had to tend to, so he asked, I need to forge a grade 7 pill, so may I borrow Senior Golden Origin Cauldron for a moment? It had been 10 days since he had left Hongyuan City, and while he hadn't had the time to check on Wei Ruyan yet, her soul should have been sufficiently nourished at this point. It was about time for him to move on to the next step. Thus, the urgent matter at hand was to forge the Grand Intermittence Pill. The various medicinal herbs should have been gathered by now, and Apothecary Lu and the others should have achieved a certain level of mastery in the forging technique he had imparted to them. What he was lacking now was a proper cauldron to forge the grand intermittence pill in. Cough cough. His face flushed with anxiety, Zhao Bingshu hurriedly explained, Zhongshe, Senior Golden Origin Cauldron is a weapon cauldron, not a pill cauldron. It went without saying that there was a huge difference between a weapon cauldron and a pill cauldron. As a 6-star blacksmith and apothecary, Zhongshe should have been more than able to tell the difference. Why would he make such a bizarre request out of the blue? I understand, but the medicinal energy contained within a grade 7 pill is so great that I fear that spirit tier cauldrons will be unable to harness it. Most probably, only a saint cauldron like Senior Golden Origin Cauldron will be able to do so, Zhongxian said. Zhongxian was confident that Apothecary Lu and the others would be able to successfully forge the grand intermittence pill if they were to follow his procedures strictly without incurring a cauldron explosion, but after his previous few experiences in pill forging, he understood that things wouldn't necessarily go as planned regardless of how thorough the preparations were. If a spirit tier cauldron was used and it failed to confine the explosion, the entire Master Teacher Academy could possibly be reduced to rubble. This was a risk he couldn't afford to take. Zhao Bingshu was perplexed. There is a huge difference between a pill cauldron and a weapon cauldron. How are you going to forge a pill in him? There's no need to worry. Even though Senior Golden Origin Cauldron is a weapon cauldron, he is still ultimately a cauldron. As long as I place a formation over him to alter his properties slightly, he will work fine as a pill cauldron as well, Zhongxian replied with a smile. The main difference between a pill cauldron and a weapon cauldron lay in their temperature. Weapon cauldrons were far better at retaining heat, thus allowing the temperature to rise to higher levels. On the other hand, pill cauldrons could heat up and cool down swiftly, making it easier to manipulate the temperature. Fortunately, this problem could be easily solved by implementing a formation on top of the cauldron, so it wasn't a huge issue. Hearing that Zhongxian could alter the properties of a weapon cauldron into that of a pill cauldron with a formation, Zhao Bingshu hesitated for a moment before nodding. If you are confident, I will talk to Senior Golden Origin Cauldron on your behalf. However, at that moment, the Golden Origin Cauldron suddenly harumphed. I am a saint weapon cauldron, and you expect me to forge a pill for you? Dream on. As a saint artifact, it had its own pride. To it, making it forge a pill was like forcing a duck to lay chicken eggs, and it viewed it as a huge insult. How could it possibly agree to that? Hearing those words, Zhao Bingshu clasped his fist and pleaded, Senior, don't waste your breath, it's not like you are unaware of my temper. If you say another word, I shall swallow you and turn you into cinders, the Golden Origin Cauldron bellowed with unconcealable pride in its tone. Hearing the obstinate tone of the Golden Origin Cauldron, Zhao Bingshu could only sigh deeply and shake his head helplessly. Zhongshe, I'm afraid that I won't be able to help you on this. If Senior Golden Origin Cauldron refuses to help you, there is no way we can force him to help you. If the spirit within a saint artifact refused to cooperate, it would be impossible to use the artifact. If the Golden Origin Cauldron were to tamper with the forging process even in the slightest, the medicinal herbs could be easily turned to ash, resulting in a tragic failure. Let me try negotiate with him myself, Zhongxian told Zhao Bingshu telepathically before walking up to the Golden Origin Cauldron. It must be said that the saint artifact was indeed massive, standing half a head taller than Zhongxian. It emanated a domineering aura that exerted immense pressure on those standing before it. As expected of the guardian saint artifact of the Master Teacher Academy, it indeed possessed fearsome prowess. Even the Byzantium Alios beast, despite its breakthrough, was no match for the other party. The Golden Origin Cauldron harumphed coldly. You want me to forge pills for you? That is impossible, so you'd better kick that idea out of your mind. Otherwise, even if they have all nominated you to be the next principal, I will still reduce you to cinders. Senior, hold it for a moment. It won't be too late for you to make your decision after hearing my offer. Zhongxian smiled confidently. After which, he stepped closer and placed his palm lightly on the Golden Origin Cauldron. Following which, he circled around the Golden Origin Cauldron, smacking his palm on it intermittently as he walked by. Do you think that Zhongshe will be able to tame Senior Golden Origin Cauldron? School head Mo asked school head Zhao discreetly as he gazed at the sight before him. Zhao Bingshu shook his head. I think it will be difficult. It's not like you don't know Senior Golden Origin Cauldron's temper. He even snubbed the old principal back then, so I don't think Zhongshe will fare any better with him. To persuade him, unlikely. Truly unlikely. I think so too. School head Mo sighed. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a sharp sound suddenly echoed from the Golden Origin Cauldron, and its massive body jolted abruptly. The next moment, it cuddled up to Zhongxian, as if a lapdog trying to please its owner. Ding ding, one pays respect to master. Master, I will forge whatever you want me to. Isn't it just pills? How many do you need? School head Mo. School head Zhao. The others. Chapter 847, Yu Fei's Invitation. The Golden Origin Cauldron was a real saint artifact, the guardian of the Master Teacher Academy. It was an extremely prideful existence, such that even though the preceding principals had the right to mobilize it in extreme situations, none had succeeded in taming it before. Even the previous principal, despite having made a breakthrough to 7-star before he went missing, had been unable to make it submit to him. To make things worse, the Golden Origin Cauldron was also extremely lazy. It preferred to spend its time dozing lazily, so nearly no one had been able to convince it to allow them to smith a weapon using it. Yet, Zhongxian was asking it to forge a pill. Everyone thought that he would be disappointed, but who knew that such a godly twist was waiting for them? Not to mention, what the heck is ding ding? Ding your head. You are a saint artifact, the guardian of the Master Teacher Academy. Where is your pride and dignity? On the other hand, Lu Feng felt as if he was going insane as well. When he invited the Golden Origin Cauldron to the conference earlier on, it had acted extremely arrogantly, even threatening to reduce him to cinders. Yet, at this very moment, it was cozying up to Zhongxian in an attempt to fawn over him, as if fearing that the latter wouldn't allow it to help him. How could there be such a huge difference in treatment even though they were both humans? Having tamed the Golden Origin Cauldron, Zhongxian turned his gaze back to the crowd and smiled. Done. Even though the Golden Origin Cauldron was a saint artifact, it still had its fair share of flaws. Using the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhongxian had been able to find them easily, and he had corrected some of them on the spot. After building up his credibility, he had given his word to the other party that he would help it raise its tier. With such an alluring offer placed before it, it was inevitable that the Golden Origin Cauldron would jump at it. After a long moment of speechlessness, Zhao Bingshu could only raise his thumb and compliment him. Incredible, my principal. It was impossible not to be impressed by him. Zhongshe had always managed to exceed their expectations each and every time. Under his lead, the academy just might reach unprecedented heights, perhaps even surpassing the other three to become the top Master Teacher Academy under Qingyuan Empire. Master, that fellow has gone to great lengths to do you in. Shall I reduce him to cinders for you? After pledging allegiance to Zhongxian, it immediately began thinking on his behalf as well. With an aura dripping with savagery, it glared at Lu Feng ferociously, seemingly threatening to devour him whole. It had seen how the other party had gleefully tried to bring his master down. His master, as a grand teacher-like figure to the other party, could overlook his grand student's mistake, but as his master's loyal artifact, it couldn't do the same. Hearing those words, Lu Feng's face immediately paled in fright. Senior. Famed as the Master Teacher Academy's guardian saint artifact, the Golden Origin Cauldron standing could be considered equivalent to an old ancestor of the Master Teacher Academy. Even if it were to really reduce him to cinders, considering that this was an internal affair of the Master Teacher Academy, not even Musha would be in a good position to speak up on his behalf. Who are you calling senior? Call me your grandfather. The Golden Origin Cauldron sneered coldly. I. On the verge of tears, Lu Feng turned to Musha desperately to plead with him for help. However, Musha shook his head and said, Senior Golden Origin Cauldron is right. You framed an innocent master teacher and nearly ruined his reputation. I will report this matter to the headquarters as I have seen it. Not only will you lose your position as the head of the apothecary school, there is a good chance that your master teacher license will be revoked as well. My master teacher license will be revoked. Lu Feng muttered in utter shock as he suddenly felt a surge of weakness through his body, and his knees fell to the ground. He had known that this matter would result in the loss of his position as the head of the apothecary school, but if he were to be stripped of his master teacher license as well, he would have lost everything that he had worked hard for over the past few centuries. Seeing Lu Feng's defeated state, Mu Shi sighed pensively. As the role model of mankind, master teachers must remain upright at all times. You allowed your own emotions to get in the way of your judgment, leaping at an opportunity to frame a fellow master teacher without conducting prudent investigation beforehand. This is already against the moral code that we, as teachers, have to observe. I can't help you with this matter. You only have yourself to blame for your plight. If he had really listened to Lu Feng's words and punished Zhong Shi without giving him a chance to explain himself, he would have truly erred greatly. A person like Lu Feng was like a black sheep among the master teachers. In order to maintain a righteous culture within the master teacher pavilion, he would have to be expelled. I understand. Lu Feng replied weakly. 2 hours ago, he had still been the influential stand-in principal of the Master Teacher Academy, a 6-star pinnacle master teacher, and a half-spiritual perception realm expert. Alas, he had fallen from grace, and the authoritative disposition that he commanded before had withered into helplessness. In this battle against Zhong Xian, he had suffered a complete defeat. After dealing with Lu Feng, Mu Shi turned his sights to Chen Chengxuan. Chen Chengxuan, for blindly listening to the words of another, failing to discern right from wrong, you will be stripped of your responsibility as the head of the Formation Master School, and you are to await the verdict from the headquarter. While school head Chen might not have played a huge role in this incident, he was still a culprit who had played a part in framing Zhong Shi. I understand. In that instant, Chen Chengxuan seemed as if he had aged a decade. As for Dong Xin, as a student of the Master Teacher Academy, instead of working hard on your studies and acting as a role model for the freshmen, you got involved in the politics of the academy and became a tool for Lu Feng to frame Zhong Shi. From today onward, you will be stripped of your position as a student. In other words, you are expelled from the academy. Mu Shi waved his hands. With the accusations against Zhong Xian proving to be unfounded, and that he was going to be the next principal of the Master Teacher Academy, those who had attempted to do him in had to be dealt with. Otherwise, if they were to set a precedent for leniency in such a matter, it might encourage others to do the same. Furthermore, the authority and standing of the principal could not be sullied by just anyone. While Dong Xin had said that she was just recounting that she had seen, it was due to her words that Lu Feng and Chen Chengxuan had put the plan into motion. The words of a master teacher held great power, so it was imperative that they should be held accountable for their words. It was an unfortunate mistake, but it was a fact that she had unwittingly become Lu Feng's accomplice as well, so she had to be promptly punished, too. With a darkened complexion, Dong Xin clasped her fist and bowed. Yes. She had thought that having found a handle on Zhong Xian, she could finally get one over him. But not only had she become of the same seniority as the other party's great-grandstudent, she was even expelled from the academy. While she was still a 6-star master teacher after leaving the academy, the connections she had built up in the academy over many years had gone to waste. On top of that, there was also a blemish on her record, making it difficult for her to advance further as a master teacher. Of the 4 of us, it seems Hu Yarou is the wisest after all. Dong Xin sighed deeply. Their 4 student factions had been competing with one another for several years, and thinking about the matter, it seemed like Hu Yarou was the one with the most foresight of the 4 leaders. As Zhong Shi's apprentice, it would mean that she was a direct subordinate of the academy's principal. With such an identity, her prestige would skyrocket, and many would be eager to fawn over her, making it easier than ever for her to obtain resources and forge connections. After dealing with the trio, Mu Shi turned to Zhong Xian and asked, Principal Zhong, is this resolution fine with you? Even though Mu Shi was a 7-star master teacher, Zhong Xian was currently the principal of the academy. By addressing Zhong Xian as Principal Zhong and consulting him on this matter, he was expressing his respect for the other party's authority, as well as to clear away any doubts that he might be siding with Lu Feng and the others. Yes, The resolution is fine with me. Zhongxian nodded in response. Actually, in his view, as long as the trio were willing to contribute all of their spirit stones to him, he didn't mind dropping the matter altogether. In any case, those three were unlikely to be able to start anything anymore. Yet, not only were they removed from their current positions, some of them might even lose their master-teacher license. What complaints could Zhongxian have of this? I still have matters to tend to, so I will be returning now. Ding ding, let's go. Leaving those words behind, Zhongxian flicked his wrist and stored the golden origin cauldron in his storage ring as he bade the others farewell. After returning to his manor, he had Sun Qiong head to the Shenzhen faction headquarters to invite Apothecary Lu and the others over before making his way to the apothecary school. Back then, he had communicated with the headquarters, and the other party had said that they would bring the grand intermittence grass over. Walking through the apothecary school, he soon reached the reception of the apothecary pavilion and found that the medicinal herb the headquarters had promised him had arrived several days earlier. It was said that the man who delivered the medicinal herb had wanted to hand it over to him personally, but after waiting a day in futility, he could only leave in disappointment. Having obtained the grand intermittence grass, Zhongxian was just about to return to his manor to check up on Wei Ruyan's condition when he suddenly saw Luo Chichi walking toward him. Upon seeing Zhongxian, Luo Chichi's eyes lit up. "Teacher, you're back." "Zhongsha." There were several others standing behind Luo Chichi. They were Yu Feiya, Xing Yuan, Wu Zhen, and Yi Qian. Just like Luo Chichi, they had all achieved a breakthrough in their cultivation, reaching the perfect harmonization realm. It seemed like Zhao Bingshu's meridian and bone cleansing was indeed extremely useful to them. In just a single period of seclusion, they had already made significant advancements in their cultivation. Not bad, Zhongxian remarked with a smile. Even though he had a conflict with the others previously, the experience they had shared in the underground chamber had forged a unique bond among them. Thus, he truly felt happy for them from the depths of his heart when he saw them achieving greater heights. "Zhongxian, I told you that I will repay my debt to you. Here are 3 high-tier spirit stones. Treat the remaining as extra compensation for that day." Yu Feiya stepped forward and handed him a jade box. 3 high-tier spirit stones were lined up within it, and they harnessed such great energy within them that even the spiritual energy in the surroundings was disturbed. She had gambled with Zhongxian on multiple occasions, but not once did a bet end in her victory, and she even became the other party's maid, though thinking about it now, she had never really fulfilled her responsibilities as a maid. Nevertheless, as a princess of Hongyuan Empire, and considering the fact that she had just made a breakthrough to the perfect harmonization realm, it wasn't too difficult for her to ask for a couple of high-tier spirit stones from the royal court. "I won't stand on ceremony then." If there was one thing Zhongxian always needed, it was spirit stones. With a flick of his wrist, he placed the jade box into his storage ring. "Zhongsha, we have heard of your encounter in the academy. Did the school heads make things difficult for you?" Xing Yuan and Wu Zhen asked anxiously. From the moment they came out from their seclusion, they had been hearing about Zhongsha's affairs in the academy, how he crippled several schools and even challenged a vice school head to a life-and-death physician duel. It could be said that in just the half of month since Zhongsha's enrollment, the ruckus he had caused in the academy was greater than what the 4 of them had caused over the past few years. Seeing that the others were sincerely worried for him, Zhongxian replied with a smile, "They didn't. Don't worry, I'm fine." "That's good." Hearing those words, the group heaved a sigh of relief. At this point, Yu Feiya stepped forward, and gritting her teeth, she hesitated for a brief moment before saying, "My father hopes to meet you." "Your father? That is, the Emperor of Hongyuan Empire?" Zhongxian was taken aback. Since Yu Feiya was the 6th princess of Hongyuan Empire, naturally, her father must be the incumbent emperor. "That's right." Yu Feiya nodded. "When?" Zhongxian asked doubtfully. "He has asked me to invite you to the banquet tonight," Yu Feiya replied. "Why would he invite me to a banquet?" Zhongxian was puzzled. He was only a 4-star master teacher. He might have caused quite a ruckus in the academy, but surely what he had done wasn't sufficient for the emperor of a Tier 1 empire to extend an invitation to him. "King Huai has gifted you a luxurious manor, and you once took me in as your maid as well. On top of that, You caused quite a huge ruckus in the academy and emptied out nearly the entire Spirit Emporium. Naturally, my father hopes to meet the mastermind behind all of that, Yu Fei said. At Zhong Xian's current pace, it seemed as if he would tear apart the capital next. If Yu Fei's father hadn't heard of him after everything that he had done, he would truly be an incompetent emperor. Not to mention, he had taken the other party's daughter as his maid at one point in time. Even though Yu Fei didn't mention it to him, he still had his sources to uncover that. This. Zhong Xian scratched his head awkwardly. All right then. However, I need to forge a pill first. If I have time, I will make sure to drop by. Since he was staying in Hongyuan Empire for the time being, it would be impossible for him to steer completely clear of Yu Fei's father way, especially if the other party was intent on meeting him. Besides, there was nothing for him to fear either. It's settled then. I will meet you at the banquet. The location is the royal palace, and here is your invitation letter. Seeing that she had received Zhong Xian's agreement, Yu Fei passed a letter over with a smile. Zhong Xian took the letter and stowed it in his storage ring. After bidding farewell to Yu Fei, Luo Chichi, and the others, Zhong Xian returned to his manor. However, as soon as he stepped through the door, Sun Qiong suddenly rushed up to him with an anxious look on his face. Young master, bad news, the 10-leafed flower you have planted in the courtyard has changed colors. Chapter 848, Wei Ruyan's state the color changed. Taken aback, Zhong Xian hurriedly made his way over the area where the 10-leafed flower was planted. The 10-leafed flower was a saint herb. Upon reaching maturity, a different colored flower would bloom on each of its 10 leaves, and each flower corresponded to a human's 307 po. One Wei Ruyan's soul had been placed into it to be nourished. Based on what his deduction, the color of the 10-leafed flower shouldn't change in the midst of the treatment, so what could be happening? Soon, at the center of the courtyard, Zhong Xian saw the 10-leafed flower. Its previously resplendent flowers had all turned pitch black, as if someone had tossed a bucket of ink over it. What happened? Zhong Xian's face darkened. The 10 colors of the 10-leafed flower were symbolic of its ability to nurture a soul. For them to have turned black, it was clear that some kind of mishap must have happened. He had already promised the deceased Wei Changfeng to take good care of his daughter, so nothing could be allowed to happen to Wei Ruyan. Young master, you told me take care of this flower, so I have been diligently watering it with some earth vein spirit essence every day. It had been growing well, and even when I checked it this morning before you returned, I didn't notice any anomalies. However, just 2 hours ago, the colors of its flowers suddenly turned pitch black. I checked the surroundings carefully, but there were no signs of anyone coming by and tampering with it. I have no idea what happened, Sun Qiong explained anxiously. It suddenly turned pitch black. Zhong Xian muttered with a frown. He released the surrounding formation and studied the surroundings carefully, and indeed, just as Sun Qiong said, it didn't seem like anyone else had been there. Since no one else had been there, Sun Qiong would have been the greatest suspect. However, Sun Qiong had been with him for some time now, and he trusted the other party deeply. Furthermore, Sun Qiong had no reason to harm Wei Ruyan. Just what could have happened? Perplexed, Zhong Xian walked up to the 10-leafed flower and studied it carefully with his eye of insight. Previously nourished by the earth vein spirit essence and heaven's path Shunqi, the 10-leafed flower had been overflowing with vitality when he left Hongyuan City 10 days ago. But in this instant, not only had the resplendent flowers turned black, even the leaves seemed to have become slightly withered, as if they were suffering from some kind of terminal illness that was sapping its life force away. This feeling was particularly prominent when Zhong Xian saw the decay on the exposed rhizome of the herb. How could this have happened? Under the constant nourishment of the dense spiritual energy from the spirit-gathering formation and the earth vein spirit essence, the saint herb should have flourished with time. How could it have been reduced to this state instead? Zhong Xian stretched his hand over to touch the 10-leafed flower and muttered flaws beneath his breath. The next moment, a book materialized in the library of Heaven's Path, and he hurriedly flipped it open. Upon taking a look, his complexion turned awful. It was indeed poisoned. According to the details recorded in the library of Heaven's Path, The reason the 10-leafed flower had been reduced to its current state was because it had been poisoned. Wei Ruyan possesses the poison soul constitution, which means that her soul contains lethal poison. The 10-leafed flower has the ability to nurture a soul, but after prolonged contact with her soul, it was inevitable that it would be poisoned. If not for the dense spiritual energy and the earth-vein spirit essence nourishing it and sustaining its life force, it would have died several days ago. A deep frown surfaced on Zhongxian's face as he analyzed the situation. Wei Ruyan's poison soul constitution was simply a formidable ability. The fact that it could suppress even the innate fetal poison in his soul served as proof of its prowess. The 10-leafed flower was a saint herb that possessed the ability to nurture a deficient soul, but even it was powerless before such a formidable poison, thus resulting in its current state. Zhongxian had been single-mindedly thinking about nurturing Wei Ruyan's soul to rouse her consciousness and treat her body that he had neglected the potency of her poison soul constitution. If the 10-leafed flower died, Wei Ruyan's soul would lose its binding to the world and dissipate swiftly. It was fortunate that Sun Qiong had noticed it early, or else she could have lost her life just like that. I should take a look at how far her soul has been nourished first. Not daring to waste any time, Zhongxian drew out his soul and observed the soul infused within the flower. A moment later, his expression turned livid. The nurturing of the 10-leafed flower could easily nurse even the weakest of souls back to perfect health within 10 days, but Wei Ruyan's poison soul constitution was simply too powerful. Putting aside how it had nearly poisoned the saint herb to death, it had also rendered its property to nurture souls nearly completely ineffective. In other words, Wei Ruyan's soul might have recovered slightly over the 10 days, but it was still in an extremely feeble state. It would take a lot more before she could regain her consciousness. At the current rate, if I wish to bring back her consciousness, I will require at least 100,000 10-leafed flowers. Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly. Just to obtain this 10-leafed flower, he had caused a huge ruckus and nearly crippled the physician school for good. 100,000 10-leafed flowers. Where in the world could he find that many? It clearly wasn't feasible. It seems like I will have to try looking for a higher tier saint herb than the 10-leafed flower. Zhongxian frowned. While the 10-leafed flower was a saint herb, it was of the lowest tier. To put it in terms of human cultivation realm, it was only at Saint 1 Dan. Naturally, its ability to counteract poison and its potency in nurturing souls would be weaker. If a higher tier saint herb was used, the effectiveness of the treatment could be increased significantly, and he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble as to gather a mountain of saint herbs. But it was so difficult to find even a stalk of a living 10-leafed flower in Hongyuan City. Could he really find a higher tier living saint herb that had the ability to nurture souls here as well? For the time being, I should return her soul to her body first. Knowing that it was futile to think about it at the moment, Zhongxian instructed Sun Qiong to carry Wei Ruyan's body over before drawing her soul out of the 10-leafed flower. The extracted soul still looked extremely weak. Even after it was returned to its body, Wei Ruyan showed no sign of regaining consciousness. Looking at the unconscious young lady before him, Zhongxian rubbed his glabella. I should just forge the grand intermittence pill for the moment. By nourishing her body, her soul will be strengthened along with it, thus stabilizing her current condition. With that, I should be able to gain some time to find a higher tier saint herb. An affliction that could render innumerable 6-star physicians helpless, Wei Ruyan's condition was clearly not as easy to treat. Zhongxian had thought that everything would fall into place once he found a living saint herb to nurture her soul, but reality had shown that his thinking was too naive. Putting everything aside, just the fact that her poison soul constitution could render most saint herb ineffective was a tough hurdle to overcome. Shaking his head grimly, Zhongxian drew out his soul and transferred his soul essence to Wei Ruyan to nourish her soul, stabilizing her condition for the time being. After this was done, he heaved a sigh of relief. While the 10-leafed flower had failed to bring back Wei Ruyan's consciousness, it hadn't been completely ineffective. At the very least, it had pulled her back from the brink of death for the time being. As long as he could successfully forge the grand intermittence pill and return vitality to her body, she should be able to last until he found a suitable saint herb to treat her. Young Master, Apothecary Lu, and the others have arrived. Sun Qiong reported. Nodding, Zhongxian tasked Sun Qiong to take care of Wei Ruyan before heading to the main hall to meet Apothecary Lu and the others. As soon as Zhongxian walked into the room, Apothecary Lu and the others hurriedly stood up and greeted him. Zhongsha, there is no need to stand on ceremony. I believe you should know why I gathered you all here today. I need your help in forging a grade 7 grand intermittence pill. Taking a seat, Zhongxian got straight to the point. Even though they had an inkling of the reason when they made their way here, their faces still turned grim upon hearing those words. As 6-star pinnacle apothecaries, they were more than confident in forging any grade 6 pills. However, to forge a grade 7 pill, not to mention, they would have to collaborate with people they had never worked with before. It was simply too difficult. Zhongsha, it is not that we are unwilling to help you, but we know our own limits, and we fear that we might not be able to reach your expectations. Apothecary Lu shook his head. They had to admit that Zhongsha did possess an inconceivable talent for pill forging, but the Grand Intermittence pill was one of the harder pills to forge even among grade 7 pills. It was impossible for them to succeed. Noticing the lack of confidence among the apothecaries, Zhongxian reassured, there is no need to worry, and you need not feel pressured as well. As long as you follow my instructions strictly, there shouldn't be much of a problem. He could understand why they would feel apprehension at having to forge the Grand Intermittence pill. The gap between each rank grew exponentially larger as one progressed up any occupation. Similarly, there was a huge gap between forging grade 6 pills and grade 7 pills. They had seen many of their peers devoting their lives to pill forging, only to never step through the final threshold. As such, it was unimaginable for them to forge the Grand Intermittence pill, the difficulty of which ranked amid the top among grade 7 pills. But even so, I still don't think that we can do it. Apothecary Lu shook his head. All of us have tried many times to forge a grade 7 pill, but never have we succeeded before. On top of that, we don't have any experience collaborating with one another, so I fear that it is nigh impossible for us to succeed. The other apothecaries also shook their heads grimly. Seeing that the apothecaries had no confidence at all, Zhongxian frowned. Skill wasn't everything to forging a good pill, one's spirit, soul, and essence must be in the right place as well. This was especially so for a pill like the Grand Intermittence pill, which harnessed vitality so overwhelming that it could regrow broken limbs. If the apothecaries carried such a pessimistic attitude, even if they were to get all of the steps correct, they would still be unable to forge a proper pill. This was a problem of spirit and faith. This was similar to how in his 1-star apothecary examination, one of his invigilators, Apothecary Chen Xiao, had managed to successfully forge tranquil heart pills in his pill debate, but due to his own condition, the pill harnessed a death aura, which not only rendered the pill ineffective but could cause one's cultivation to go berserk as well. A grade 7 pill would be Saint tier at the very least, which meant that it would possess a spirit of its own. If the apothecary forging the pill suffered from a lack of spirit, how could the pill forging be successful? Zhongxian only had one set of medicinal herbs, so there would be no second chances. Failure was a luxury he couldn't afford. Since none of you have the confidence, then, pardon me, seeing the state that the apothecaries were in, Zhongxian knew that it would be difficult for him to make them regain their confidence anytime soon. However, he didn't have the time to spare at the moment. Thus, he flicked his wrist, and the pile of medicinal herbs fell to the ground. These were the medicinal herbs that the apothecaries had prepared and entrusted Sun Qiong to pass to him. After which, he took a deep breath and began speaking. Let's get straight down to business. Here are the medicinal herbs. Apothecary Lu, extract the medicinal essence of the gold-silver burclover. Apothecary Qiu, process the truebeard flower under low heat. Apothecary Liu. Zhongxian issued instructions swiftly, and his words seemed to carry a unique rhythm to them, making it particularly pleasant to the ear. The apothecaries were intending on refusing Zhongxian, but before they knew it, their bodies were already moving according to the other party's instructions. Impartation of heaven's will. Feeling how their bodies were moving against their will, the crowd narrowed their eyes in astonishment. No matter how slow they were, it was obvious that the young man before them had used impartation of heaven's will against them, but they were 6-star pinnacle master teachers, Saint Realm experts, and their soul depths could be considered among the highest in the Master Teacher Academy. Never had they thought that they would succumb to the impartation of heaven's will of another so easily. Even at the very least, his soul depth must have reached 21, they thought in shock. To be able to make so many of them fall under his impartation of heaven's will so easily, it meant that the other party's soul depth was significantly higher than theirs, very possibly reaching the level of a 7-star Master Teacher. For a 20-year-old freshman to possess a soul depth of 21. Such a genius was probably rare even within the sage clans. Perhaps, under the young man's leadership, they might just be able to produce a miracle. Chapter 849, Pill Mist. In the tattered Elder Hall of the Master Teacher Academy, Musha and the others couldn't help but fall in a daze as they stared at the destruction before them. The Elder Hall had many years of history to it, and countless precious antiques and relics from the predecessors had been stored in it. But now, it had all been reduced to rubble. To be able to reduce the entire area to this state with just the aura he exuded, collapsing even the Teacher Acknowledgement Hall, Yangsha's prowess was too fearsome. Wei Ranxue couldn't help but remark, it seems like Zhongsha's destructive capabilities were picked up from Yangsha. The other school heads nodded in agreement with bitter smiles. Even though Zhongsha had destroyed quite a few of buildings since his enrollment, they could tell that had happened due to a series of unfortunate coincidences, and it wasn't intentional. However, the matter with Yangsha was different. In a fit of rage, the entire Elder Hall just abruptly collapsed under his wrath. That ability to destroy was clearly a level higher than Zhongsha's, tearing down walls and buildings without the slightest warning beforehand in the face of a disagreement. It was truly fortunate that they didn't hurt his student. If someone had really injured Zhongsha, wouldn't Yangsha tear down the Master Teacher Academy or even the entirety of Hongyuan City? It is really a blessing that there is a protective formation around the area which helped to conceal the destruction from the eyes and ears of others, and Yangsha seemed to have held himself back as well, so the destruction isn't too widespread. Otherwise, the Master Teacher Academy would become the laughingstock for the entire Master Teacher Pavilion for years to come, Musha said. Indeed. The others nodded in agreement. It was clear that Yangsha had reigned in his immense strength, choosing to destroy only the Elder Hall, Teacher Acknowledgement Hall, and the buildings in the region in order to strike fear into their hearts. Otherwise, given the other party's incredible strength, if he had wished to see blood, putting aside just the handful of them present at the scene, it was questionable whether even the full force of the Qingyuan conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion would be able to stop here. Repair those buildings within a day, and send out news to the relevant powers in the region to inform them that the new principal has been chosen, and they are invited to attend the inauguration ceremony, Musha instructed. The others nodded in acknowledgement to his instructions. Right. As for the matter regarding Yangsha, since we are all master teachers, I believe that you should know what to do even without me saying so. As per the norm, make sure to seal your lips tight. Anyone who fails to do so will be punished according to the crime of betraying humanity. With his hands behind his back, Musha's eyes swept through the crowd with a gaze as sharp as a knife. The whereabouts, appearance, and even students of a pinnacle master teacher like Yangsha were considered to be confidential secrets of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Juniors like them had no right to discuss such matters. Otherwise, if news were to leak to the enemies of the Master Teacher Pavilion and some sort of mishap occurred, they would be unable to pay for their sins even if they were to die 1,000 times over. Mindful of the grave importance of the matter, the crowd nodded. Understood. After which, Musha's pressurizing gaze fell upon Lu Feng. What about you, Lu Feng? Lu Feng had a grudge against Zhongsha, and it was also due to Zhongsha that he was going to suffer severe punishment from the Master Teacher Pavilion. If he were to attempt to exact vengeance on Zhongsha, it could potentially lead to dire consequences. It is my fault that the Elder Hall has been reduced to its current state. I will donate all my wealth to supplement the reparation cost for the destruction here. After which, I shall apply to become a guardian of the subterranean gallery, Lu Feng said. You wish to go to the subterranean gallery? Hearing this decision, everyone's faces darkened. Even school head Mo, who had a poor impression of Lu Feng, frowned upon hearing those words. Are you certain? I have been reflecting on my deeds, and I realized that in my pursuit to become the principal of Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, I have lost sight of what I stood for originally. Perhaps, I might be able to rediscover myself in the subterranean gallery. Even if death lies at the end of this path, I have no regret. Lu Feng nodded in determination. When he looked back at his past, he realized that his aim had changed at some point in time. He had not started out as a person hungry for power, but under the intense rivalry amid the 10 great master teachers and his desire to prove himself, the desire for the principal seat sparked in his mind, and before long, it had grown into a blazing flame. And like a moth attracted to a flame, he found himself sinking deeper and deeper into his desire. However, with Zhongshe decided as the next principal, the flame that had blinded his eyes vanished, and as if a man awakening from a dream, he suddenly realized how ludicrous and shallow his actions had been. The reason Kong Shi established the Master Teacher Pavilion wasn't to bask in the respect and glory of it, nor was it to serve as a tool to vie for power and claim supremacy. It was to guard mankind and bring it to greater heights. But the allure of power was simply too difficult for any man to resist. Even the most steadfast of master teachers could stumble easily in its face and lose the faith they had held resolutely at the start of their journey. Since you have made such a decision, I will not report this matter to the headquarters for the time being and allow you to remain as a 6-star master teacher. However, I hope that you remember your promise. Don't let the Master Teacher Pavilion and yourself down anymore, Mu Shi said. Hearing that Mu Shi was willing to give him another chance, Lu Feng's eyes reddened in agitation. Thank you, Mu Shi. For a moment, he suddenly recalled the oath he had made when he first became a master teacher several centuries ago, and the surge of passion that he had felt back then ran through his old body once more. Following which, Mu Shi turned to school head Zhao and instructed, Zhao Bingshu, you will be in charge of liaising with the powers and inviting them to the inauguration ceremony. Remember not to reveal the matter of Zhong Shi being the succeeding principal for the time being. He is still too weak at the moment, so it is necessary that we take such precautions to ensure his safety. Once he receives the principal's seal in the inauguration ceremony, there will be no need for us to worry about his safety anymore. Understood. Zhao Bingshu nodded. As for Mo Zhu and Wei Ranxue, you will be in charge of keeping a lookout on the internal state of the academy. Take note of the atmosphere in the academy and make sure to quell any unnatural movements that might not be conducive to the inauguration ceremony. Mu Shi continued. However, halfway through his words, the ground suddenly began trembling, and a deafening blast reverberated from the distance. Hearing the explosion, Mu Shi narrowed his eyes. What happened? Along with the other school heads gathered in the Elder Hall, he immediately headed in the direction of where the explosion originated from. A short distance away from the academy, they saw an entire row of collapsed residences. It seemed like the explosion had originated from that area. Mo Zhu's eyes narrowed, and he exclaimed in astonishment, "Isn't that Zhong Shi's manor?" He had heard that King Huai had given Zhong Xian a manor, and he had looked into the matter as well. Naturally, he knew where the manor was as well. But this, why would it collapse out of the blue? It can't be that Zhong Shi, in a fit of anger, decided to destroy his own manor as well. Wei Ranxue gulped down a mouthful of saliva. It was said that just for the renovations, King Huai had spent hundreds of high-tier spirit stones. Yet, in an instant, that extravagant manor was reduced to rubble along with dozens of residences in the surroundings. This was an even greater tragedy than what had happened to the Elder Hall. They had known that wherever Zhong Xian went, destruction wouldn't be too far away, but to destroy his own manor as well. This was way too exaggerated. They had seen people going on a rampage and punching others, but they had never seen anyone going on a rampage and punching themselves. It doesn't seem like he has torn down his manor intentionally. Look. At that moment, Mu Shi abruptly pointed upward. Hong Long. As if in response to his words, a violent jolt suddenly occurred from the direct center of the area of destruction, and a 7-colored mist abruptly burst forth, illuminating the surroundings. This is Pill Mist. Pill Mist. Legend has it that it will only appear when a grade 8 pill is forged. The higher grade a pill is, the more potent it will be. Upon reaching a certain point, it has to suffer a backlash from the heavens as well. The pill mist is a form of heavenly tribulation that appears with the forging of grade 8 pills. Just what in the world is Zhongshe forging? How could pill mist appear here? Upon taking a closer look at the form of the mist, the school heads immediately recognized what it was, and they nearly lost their sanity. Pill mist, just as the name suggested, was a phenomenon that occurred in the midst of the forging of a grade 8 pill. For it to appear, didn't it mean that Zhongshe was attempting to forge a grade 8 pill? No, it isn't a grade 8 pill. If that were the case, there would be a tribulation within the pill mist, but the fact that it is absent means that it is highly unlikely that the pill forged has reached grade 8 yet. Nevertheless, there is no doubt that it is a grade 7 pinnacle at the very minimum, and the chances are that it is an inscribed pill as well. Otherwise, such a phenomenon wouldn't have occurred, Musha said with a frown. He had once had the privilege of witnessing the formation of a grade 8 pill with his own eyes. Not only was there pill mist, even the apothecary himself had to undergo a lightning tribulation as well. Through the refinement of lingering lightning sparks, the pill would be further perfected, thus forming a sentient spirit within it. However, the fact that there was only the pill mist but no lightning tribulation meant that the grade of the pill forged hadn't reached the mark yet. A grade 7 pinnacle inscribed pill? Everyone's mouths twitched in astonishment. That was likely to be more valuable than most ordinary grade 8 pills. Pills could be classified into 4 tiers of quality: formation, satiation, perfection, and inscribed pill. Even within their academy, inscribed pill was a thing of the legends. Only very few apothecaries had achieved it in their lifetime. Yet, to think that Zhongshe would manage to achieve this level of quality while forging a grade 7 pill. Was this for real? Let's go over to take a look. Unable to hold back their curiosity, the school heads hurriedly flew over. In Hongyuan Empire's royal palace, a middle-aged man was currently sitting before a golden table with a brush in his hand, browsing through memorials. The emperor of Hongyuan Empire, Yu Fei's father, Yu Shenqing. He had a dense layer of zhenqi shrouding around him, morphing into the forms of many beasts such as dragons and tigers, projecting an authoritative disposition that put others at bay. Even though he wasn't driving his cultivation, judging by the aura he commanded by itself, it seemed that Yu Shenqing possessed strength on par with school head Mo and the others, Saint Realm 1 Dan Pinnacle. A eunuch walked into the room and reported, "Your Majesty, we have completed the preparations for the banquet tonight." UN. Putting down his brush, Yu Shenqing pinched his glabella before asking, "What did Fei say? Did she manage to invite Zhongshe over?" "Reporting to Your Majesty, Her Highness says that Zhongshe has received the invitation and that he will be here tonight," the eunuch reported. "That's good. I would love to see the young man who dares to make my daughter his maid." Yu Shenqing harumphed in displeasure. "Your Majesty, that Zhongshe has caused quite a huge ruckus in the Master Teacher Academy, so he is likely to be a man with great capability. However, to make Her Highness his personal maid, he has indeed overstepped his boundaries," the eunuch said. "Indeed. I have doted on my daughter ever since she was born, and it pains me deeply to even chide or nag at her. And yet, he actually dared to take advantage of her. I sure would like to see how many heads that fellow has. I will make sure to teach him a lesson when he arrives later on so that he learns what humility is." Yu Shenqing's gaze turned cold. At that moment, the ground beneath him suddenly tremored violently. Frowning deeply, Yu Shenqing instructed, "What happened?" "Go and take a look." "Yes, Your Majesty." Hearing those words, the eunuch hurriedly rushed out of the palace. Not too long later, the eunuch returned with a bizarre look on his face. "Reporting to Your Majesty, it seems like Zhongshe has destroyed the manna that King Huai gifted him." "He destroyed his own manna?" Yu Shenqing was taken aback. "That's right. That Zhongshe. When he went to the blacksmith school collapsed. When he went to the physician school collapsed. When he went to the apothecary school collapsed. Now, when he returned to his own manna, even his manna collapsed. He really brings destruction wherever he goes," the eunuch remarked. "Brings destruction wherever he goes." Yu Shenqing's mouth twitched. "This. Shall we cancel the banquet tonight then? Or, Why don't we just cancel our invitation to Zhongxian? No, that won't do. It would be a breach of etiquette if we were to cancel the banquet or our invitation abruptly. Since that's the case, help me invite Formation Master Wu over and have him set up a dozen fortification formations in case anything happens. Yes, Your Majesty. The eunuch was slightly stunned for an instant before nodding and backing out from the palace. Chapter 850, Body Saint Tree. When Musha arrived at Zhongxian's manor, they realized that senior Byzantium Alios had wrapped everyone within his power, so no one had been injured in the catastrophe. At this very instant, Zhongshe was standing before a towering cauldron, bellowing furiously. What did you guarantee me before the pill forging? To be unable to withstand even the medicinal energy of a mere grade 7 pill, how can you have the cheek to call yourself a saint artifact? Saint artifact your head. He was indeed very infuriated by this incident. That fellow had promised him that it would have no trouble forging a grade 7 pill. That was the reason he had gone to the extent of using the impartation of Heaven's will to control Apothecary Lu and the others so as to guarantee that there were no mistakes in the steps at all. All of the medicinal herbs prepared were of excellent maturity, and there was no mistake whatsoever, so the pill was swiftly formed. Yet, in the instant that the pill was formed, it turned out that the one who would drag his feet wasn't Apothecary Lu and the others but the guardian saint artifact of the Master Teacher Academy, Golden Origin Cauldron. Unable to properly hold in the rampaging energies harnessed within it, the lid of the Golden Origin Cauldron abruptly burst open, resulting in the energies destroying everything in the area. It was fortunate that no one was injured, but his manner. It was gone just like that. I didn't know that you were going to forge such a potent pill either. Berated by Zhongxian, the Golden Origin Cauldron tried to explain itself indignantly. It was indeed a saint artifact, but it was a weapon cauldron and not a pill cauldron. Even though a formation had been cast over it to manage the temperature regulation, its physical structure still wasn't optimized for pill forging. Forging an ordinary grade 7 pill was already stretching its limits, but the pill that Zhongxian was forging just had to be the Grand Intermittence pill. It was already a huge blessing that it wasn't blown to smithereens on the spot. If you had been able to hold on, that pill would have surely reached grade 8. Look, due to your error, the final product is only a grade 7 inscribed pill. What a huge waste of those precious medicinal herbs. Zhongxian harumphed coldly. He knew that the Golden Origin Cauldron couldn't be blamed for this matter, but he simply couldn't hold back his rage. One must know that there was a huge qualitative difference between a grade 7 inscribed pill and grade 8 pill. It was such a waste of Jiang Qingqian's Phoenix Timber Core and the high-maturity medicinal herbs that the other old elders of the apothecary school had prepared for him. Grade 8. Grade 7 inscribed pill? On the other hand, after hearing those words, Apothecary Lu and the others finally understood what kind of pill they had just forged, and their bodies wouldn't stop trembling in excitement. Big brother, the Grand Intermittence pill is a grade 7 pill in itself. It is already an incredible feat to forge it to the level of an inscribed pill. There is no guarantee that 8-star pinnacle apothecaries would be capable of doing the same. And yet, you were thinking of forging it to the level of a grade 8 pill? Man, you are really about to break out of the atmosphere. Forget it. At the very least, the pill is fine. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to compensate for it even if I were to sell you off. After berating the Golden Origin Cauldron one last time, he took a deep breath and released his anger before storing the pill in a jade bottle. After which, he finally noticed the presence of Mu Shu and the others. He clasped his fist and greeted, Mu Shu, school heads. Recognizing the pill, Mu Shu asked, to verify the matter, senior uncle, the pill that you have just forged, is it the Grand Intermittence pill? That's right. Zhongxian nodded. To be able to forge the grade 7 Grand Intermittence pill to the point that pill mist is produced. Inconceivable, truly inconceivable, Mu Shu exclaimed. The Grand Intermittence pill has the ability to regrow limbs. If it isn't inconvenient, may I ask why senior uncle is forging this pill? As a pill overflowing with vitality, the Grand Intermittence pill could heal even the most severe injuries and even induce the regrowing of limbs. It wouldn't be too far off to claim that the pill only fell short of bringing back the dead. Not to mention, The pill that Zhongxian had forged was just a step away from reaching grade 8. It is to save a junior, Zhongxian replied. After which, he gestured for the Byzantium Alios beast to bring Wei Ruyan over before taking out the jade bottle once more. Is this the person whom senior uncle hopes to save? Musha frowned. That's right. Zhongxian nodded. This young lady's body is currently too frail. I fear that your grand intermittence pill might be a little too potent for her current condition. The chances are that it could end up worsening her condition instead, Musha said. As the common adage among physicians went, overnourishment kills the frail. Even for a Saint Realm 3 Dan expert like him, it would be difficult to absorb and assimilate the overwhelming medicinal energy contained within that grand intermittence pill fully, let alone an unconscious and frail young lady. Most likely, her body would be utterly destroyed by the overwhelming medicinal energy before it could work its wonders. It's not a problem. Zhongxian waved his hands casually. He uncorked the jade bottle, and a dense surge of spiritual energy immediately gushed into the surroundings. In the next instant, a pill abruptly surged into the air, attempting to flee. At the level of a grade 7 inscribed pill, the grand intermittence pill possessed spirit, granting it the instinctive ability to avert danger. Even though it hadn't developed sentience yet, given sufficient time, it could develop sentience like the Golden Origin Cauldron. If it were allowed to continue developing, a day might come when it could even morph into a human. Trying to flee? Come back. However, Zhongxian seemed to have expected that the pill would react in such a manner. With a cold harumph, he abruptly closed his fists, and a surge of energy suddenly emerged from the pill itself, sealing its movements. Following which, the pill was forcefully pulled back to the ground by the surge of energy. Having gone through the books in the library of the apothecary school, Zhongxian knew that grade 7 pills possessed such a property, so he had left a hand in advance. Using his zhunqi to support the Wei Ruyan's lower jaw, Zhongxian opened her mouth and fed her the grand intermittence pill. Tzzzzzzzzzzzz. As soon as the pill entered her body, a sizzling sound reminiscent of searing metal coming in contact with iced water sounded. At the same time, Wei Ruyan's ghastly pale face gradually began to regain a healthy red glow. However, a short moment later, it stopped. At this point, even though Wei Ruyan seemed to be in a better state than before, she was still in a deep sleep, and there was no sign of her regaining consciousness. Zhongxian quickly placed his fingers on the other party's pulse before heaving a sigh of relief. If it had been someone else, perhaps they might have succumbed to the overwhelming medicinal energy contained within the grand intermittence pill and died. However, Wei Ruyan was a unique case. Her unique constitution was so powerful that she could even poison a saint herb like the 10-leafed flower while unconscious. A grade 7 inscribed pill might contain immense medicinal energy within it, but most of it had turned into nutrients to feed her innate poison body. While the grand intermittence pill wasn't enough to cure her affliction entirely, it did help her body to recover to perfect health. Even the trauma that she had suffered back in her mother's womb had healed as well. With the recovery of her body, even if her soul remains unconscious for the time being, she shouldn't be in any danger. Zhongxian thought. To still remain unconscious despite having consumed the grand intermittence pill. Senior uncle, what kind of affliction is this young lady suffering from? Musha asked in astonishment. One must know that the grand intermittence pill was so potent that it would be difficult for him to bear it. It was one thing for a frail patient to be fine after consuming it, but for her to remain unconscious after that, the affliction she was suffering from sure was fearsome. On top of her frail physical body, her soul has suffered some damage as well. Even though her body has recovered with the consumption of the grand intermittence pill, her soul is still far too weak for her to regain consciousness, Zhongxian explained. At that instant, he suddenly thought of something and asked, Musha, do you know where I can obtain living saint herbs that can nurture souls? I need as many of those as possible. He didn't have any clue as to where he could find saint herbs to nourish Wei Ruyan's soul, but Musha might know where he could source them. After a moment of contemplation, Musha shook his head. I do know of a few places that sell saint herbs capable of nurturing souls, but all of them are dried. Living saint herbs? I really don't have any idea in mind. You don't know either? Zhongxian sighed in disappointment. He could easily find dried saint herbs in the apothecary school and physician school as well, but it was a pity that those were useless for Wei Ruyan's current condition. For his treatment, the saint herb must be alive. At this moment, Zhong Ding-chun, who was among the group of school heads who had gone over to check out the situation, abruptly spoke up. "Zhongshe, if you really require a living saint herb, I do know of one in Hongyuan City." As the head of the physician school, he maintained an intelligence network on medicinal herbs so that he could easily source them when he required them. "Oh, where is it?" Zhong Xian asked anxiously. "In the royal palace of Hongyuan Empire, there is a body saint tree. It is known to possess exceptional effectiveness in nurturing souls," Zhong Dingchun said. "Body saint tree?" Zhong Xian frowned. He had never heard of such a tree before. Rumor has it that the tree was brought back from the wilderness by the ancestors of the current Hongyuan royal family. Knowing that it has the effect of nurturing souls, they chose to plant it in the royal palace to benefit the generations to come. This is the reason the royal offspring of Hongyuan Empire possess exceptionally powerful souls. After a moment of hesitation, Zhong Dingchun continued, "However, the tree is one of the most important treasures of the royal family, so I fear that they might not be willing to lend it to you." "I see." Stroking his lower jaw, Zhong Xian fell into deep thought. "It happens that there is a banquet at the royal palace tonight. I should make use of the opportunity to take a look at the body tree and determine if it will be effective on Wei Ruyan first. If it is, it will be worth giving it a shot. Anyway, thank you for your advice, school head Zhong." Zhong Xian clasped his fist. "There is no need to stand on ceremony, Zhongshe," Zhong Dingchun hurriedly replied. After which, Zhong Xian tried asking for some more details regarding the body tree, but it seemed like the others didn't know much about it either. Thus, he could only shake his head helplessly. "Zhongshe, I will send some men to help you repair your manor," Zhao Bingshu said. It would be truly tragic if the future principal of the Master Teacher Academy were to be rendered homeless, and such publicity could have adverse effects on the inauguration ceremony 3 days later. "I will be depending on you, school head Zhao." Zhong Xian nodded in gratitude. If only he'd known that such a mishap would occur in the forging of the Grand Intermittence Pill, he would have surely taken the others to a clearing to conduct the pill forging. At the very least, he wouldn't have ended up destroying his own residence. "UN." Zhao Bingshu nodded. After which, Mu She and the school heads bade farewell and returned to the Master Teacher Academy. It had already been afternoon when Zhong Xian first returned to his manor from the Saint Ascension platform. After which, he had attended the hearing at the Elder Hall and forged the Grand Intermittence Pill. Time passed swiftly, and unknowingly, the sun had already set, allowing darkness to permeate the sky. Looking at the rubble, Zhong Xian pondered for a moment before gently placing Wei Ruyan in the myriad ant hive and instructing Sun Qiong, Wang Ying, and the others to spend their night at the residences in the Master Teacher Academy, which they were allocated as guest elders of the martial arts school. After this was done, he was just about to make his way to the royal palace to attend the banquet when something suddenly caught his eye, and he stopped in his tracks. His gaze swept across his surroundings, and he couldn't help but notice that the rubble around him seemed to be laid in a formation resembling a massive dragon prowling the grounds. "Is this the Earth Dragon?" Zhong Xian's eyes narrowed in astonishment. Looking at this formation, he couldn't help but recall the clue that he had obtained from Wu Yangzi regarding the location of his treasure, in his old residence, beneath 3 stars of the Earth Dragon. If what he was seeing before him was the Earth Dragon in the clue, then, what could the 3 stars be? Zhong Xian immediately turned his gaze upward. Countless stars scattered throughout the seemingly endless night sky came into sight. How am I to know which 3 stars Wu Yangzi is referring to? Zhong Xian frowned in frustration. All he had received from the clue was 3 stars of the Earth Dragon. There was no clue as to which 3 stars it was referring to, or even their general location. He might have found the Earth Dragon, but without the 3 stars, he wouldn't be able to pinpoint the location of the treasure. Was he supposed to overturn every inch of ground in the manor to find the treasure? Besides, if it was possible to find the treasure by doing so, it would have long been uncovered by someone else in the last 2,000 years. Thinking that it might be helpful to get a bird's-eye view, Zhongxian executed the red dust heaven ascending steps and leaped into the sky. The collapsed rubble seemed to meander on the ground, connecting with the dark sky at the horizon, as if a massive dragon that was on the verge of soaring into the heavens. Eye of Insight. Knowing that it was impossible to find it just like that, Zhongxian activated his Eye of Insight before turning his gaze to the point where the earth dragon intersected with the dark sky. Chapter 851. Scarlet Firefly Fruit. At the point where the earth dragon and the dark sky intersected was a river that flowed along the walls of the academy and into the depths of the seemingly boundless darkness. Looking along the body of the earth dragon, there were several ponds with flowers and trees by the side. It resembled patches of clouds, which further accentuated the image of a dragon rising to the heavens. After studying the area for over 10 minutes, Zhongxian's head was starting to spin from overusing his Eye of Insight. Shaking his head, he could only stop there. From what he had deduced so far, it seemed like the 3 stars Wu Yangzi had referred to weren't literal stars or a figurative description of the geography. It didn't seem like he would be able to figure out what it was with just a quick glance, and a more thorough investigation was required. Nevertheless, having found the earth dragon, he was already at the halfway mark to finding Wu Yangzi's treasure. As long as he were to put in some more effort, he should be able to find the 3 stars easily. After all, if Wu Yangzi was willing to reveal the location of his treasure, he would have hidden it with the expectation that someone would be able to find it. Thinking that he should head to the banquet first and continue his investigation after that, Zhongxian was just about to descend back to the ground when he saw a figure in the distance flitting swiftly toward the manor. Hu Yao Yao? What is she doing here at this time? Zhongxian muttered under his breath. The Eye of Insight could peer through the darkness, thus allowing Zhongxian to recognize the other party immediately. However, it didn't seem like she had noticed him in the sky, bypassing him and rushing straight to a vantage point amid the rubble. Despite being a Chrysalis Realm Pinnacle expert, it still wasn't easy for her to find a person in the dark. Flicking her wrist, she took out a night illumination pearl and began scanning the area carefully. Zhong Laroche, she shouted. As an apprentice, her relationship to Zhongxian was reminiscent to that of a teacher and a student, so she had changed the way she addressed him accordingly. Zhongxian was just about to descend back to the ground to reply to her call when he suddenly noticed something. The faint glow of the night illumination pearl in Hu Yaoyoro's hand was reflected in a pond not too far away from where she stood, and from his point of view, it bore an uncanny resemblance to a star. Could it be? Zhongxian's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly turned his gaze to the other ponds in the courtyard as well. As expected, as if resonating to one another, the faint radiance of the night illumination pearl was reflected in their surfaces as well. This addition to the formation created a picturesque sight of the earth dragon traversing across the night sky, journeying in the accompaniment of the stars. Over the past 2,000 years, the layout of the manor has gone through massive changes. Perhaps, at the very start, there might only have been 3 ponds. I will have to find the original 3 stars then. There should only be 3 stars according to the message left behind by Wu Yangzi. If the light reflected in the ponds were the stars mentioned in the clue, he had too many of them at the moment. However, this didn't necessarily mean that Zhongxian's direction was wrong. Too long a time had passed, so the layout of the manor could have undergone numerous changes. Others might stumble before this problem, but this isn't an issue to me. Zhongxian smiled confidently. It would be difficult for even Mu Shi to decisively determine which of the current 8 ponds were existent 2,000 years ago, but this was a piece of cake for Zhongxian. With the Eye of Insight, he could easily tell how long each pond had been around for. In just a few moments, he had already confirmed which the 3 ponds he was looking for. After which, he swiftly mapped out the midpoint of the triangle formed by the 3 stars. The resulting location was a towering ancient pine tree positioned just in front of the manor's main hall. It seems like the treasure is hidden beneath the pine tree, Zhongxian thought. Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhongxian descended to the ground and walked up to Hu Yaoyao. You were looking for me? Zhong Laoshi, you are fine. I really didn't expect you to go so far just to find Wu Yangzi's treasure. Hu Yaoyao was visibly relieved for a moment after seeing Zhongxian before gesturing to her surroundings speechlessly. Do you know how much this manor cost? If you do, How could you destroy it like that? Even if it is to find Wu Yang's treasure, surely you didn't have to reduce the mana to this state. Black lines streaked across Zhongxian's face as he heard those words. I didn't do this to find the treasure. It was an accident. It can't be that you came here to watch the commotion after hearing that the mana has collapsed. No, it's not that. I have something that I need your help on, Hu Yarou said. She had heard about the treasure that Wu Yangzi had left behind, but many of her predecessors had already attempted to find it, to no avail. Thinking that there was little hope in that direction, she had decided to not pay it any heed. What's wrong? Zhongxian asked with a frown. While Hu Yarou was docile before him, she was still one of the most influential figures in the Master Teacher Academy, and she had many tricks up her sleeves as well. What kind of matter could it be that would require his help? Hu Yarou hesitated for a moment before speaking. To tell you the truth, Dongxin, Longtsungyue, Shuizhenyang, and I have found a treasure that can increase the chances of making the breakthrough to half-saint by 20%. Naturally, we are planning to obtain the treasure, but there are two powerful beasts guarding it, and we aren't a match for them. Thus, we hope to seek your help for this matter. A treasure. Zhongxian fell into deep thought. Back then, he had once followed Hu Yarou to a gazebo and overheard them speaking about some kind of treasure maturing by the end of the month, and looking at the current date, it did seem to be about time to harvest it. That's right. You possess both strength and knowledge, so we were unable to think of anyone more suitable to help us with this matter than you, Hu Yarou said. Even though the four of them were powerful figures who no one dared to offend in the academy, for some reason, all of them had stumbled before him. She had become his apprentice, Shuizhenyang had become his grandstudent, and Dongxin, the most pitiful one of them, had not only become his great-grandstudent but was expelled from the academy as well. Longtsungyue, who had chosen not to take any action, was the sole survivor of their group. Typically speaking, considering how 3 out of 4 of them had some kind of grudge with Zhongxian, they would be reluctant to seek his help. However, with that object's date of maturity swiftly approaching, they were pressed on time. They had to make a move soon or else those two huge fellows would have devoured it for themselves. By then, they would be left with nothing at all. Thus, after some serious discussion, they had eventually decided to seek Zhongxian's help. That fellow might be the god of destruction, but he had proven that he was a capable individual on multiple occasions. Otherwise, the 3 of them wouldn't have been subdued by him either. To be able to increase the chances of making a breakthrough to half-saint by 20%, what kind of treasure is it? Zhongxian asked curiously. Back at the Saint Ascension platform, he had seen many insights from the predecessors, and from that, he had gained a rough understanding of how difficult it was to make a breakthrough from Chrysalis Realm to half-saint. To talents like that, 20% could make a huge difference. Under the dim light of the night illumination pearl, Zhongxian could see Hu Yarou biting her crimson lips together hesitantly before saying, "It is the Saint Realm medicinal herb, the scarlet firefly fruit." Scarlet firefly fruit? Zhongxian pondered for a moment before his eyes abruptly lit up. He had heard of the scarlet firefly fruit before. It was a saint herb with a scarlet exterior, and upon maturity, it would release a beautiful fluorescent light reminiscent of a firefly. Growing by absorbing sunlight and moonlight, the fruit had a maturity period of 100 years. On top of that, it was extremely rare and couldn't be artificially cultivated, thus making it very difficult to obtain. While consuming the scarlet firefly fruit wouldn't guarantee a breakthrough to half-saint, its ability to increase the chances at doing so was more than sufficient to make Chrysalis Realm cultivators go insane over it. Even Zhongxian was moved by its effects as well. Even though Zhongxian's cultivation was only at ethereal treading realm primary stage at the moment, around 2 realms away from reaching half-saint, given his current rate of cultivation, as long as he had sufficient high-tier spirit stones and the relevant cultivation technique, he should be able to reach it within 6 hours. The compilation of insights from the Saint Ascension platforms had already greatly boosted his chances at making a breakthrough, and the aid of the scarlet firefly fruit could make his breakthrough go even more smoothly. For one, as a cultivator of the Heaven's Path divine art, the spiritual energy he required to make a breakthrough was enormous. While he did obtain quite a lot of earth vein spirit essence from the Cloud Mist Ridge, It was hard to tell if it would still be effective by the time he reached Chrysalis' realm. After all, the earth-vein spirit vine was still slightly lacking in purity. However, if he could obtain the scarlet firefly fruit, he could confidently say that Half-Saint was finally within sight. That's right. Based on our investigation, there is a total of 10 scarlet firefly fruits in the area. As long as you help us obtain them, we will split them equally among us, meaning that each of us will obtain 2 fruit. Hu Yarou said. 2 each. Zhongxian stroked his lower jaw in contemplation before nodding slightly. I am fine with that. Given that he hadn't participated in the scouting and the preparation work, it was indeed not bad that he was going to receive an equal share. And of course, if he were to contribute more than proportionately to the obtaining of the scarlet firefly fruits later on, he could always renegotiate the distribution then. So, you will help us? Honestly speaking, Hu Yarou had thought that Zhongxian would try to bargain for more favorable terms for himself, so she was slightly taken aback when she heard him agreeing to it so readily. Of course. Zhongxian nodded. When are we setting off? We can set off now if you are ready. We will be riding on Dongxin's tamed beast, and it will take roughly 3 days for us to arrive at our destination. So, even at the very minimum, our trip will take 7 to 8 days, Hu Yarou said. 7 to 8 days. Zhongxian frowned. His inauguration ceremony as the next principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy was 3 days from now, so he couldn't afford to leave for such a long period of time now. That's right. We have made a rough calculation of when the scarlet firefly fruit will mature, but we will be arriving earlier to give us some leeway in case it matures earlier. However, if it matures later than we expected, we might end up spending a few more days there, Hu Yarou said. You are saying that the trip could be even longer than that? Didn't that mean that he might spend nearly half a month away from the academy? That was too long. He could potentially raise his cultivation to nascent saint in half a month. To waste it for a mere half-saint was not worth the time and effort. And most importantly of all, he would miss the inauguration ceremony as well. But the inauguration ceremony for the new principal of the academy is 3 days from now. If we leave now, we will definitely miss it, Zhongxian said. I have heard of the matter, too. According to the rumors, the reason Mu She was sent to our academy was to nominate our next principal. I sure do wonder who our next principal is. I tried asking my teacher, but she refused to say anything about the matter. However, it should probably be either School Head Lu or School Head Zhao. They are the most respected elders in the academy, and they wield the greatest influence as well. Thus, the probability of them becoming the next principal should be the highest. At which, Hu Yarou smiled and reassured, Don't worry, I have asked my teacher, and she has granted me the special privilege to skip on the inauguration ceremony to obtain the scarlet firefly fruit. Besides, Zhong Laosha, you aren't a student of the academy now, so it shouldn't matter to you who becomes the next principal of the academy, right? As the leader of the bewitching devil faction, she had heard about the conflict between School Head Lu and Zhongxian, and how the latter had been kicked out of the academy. Given that Zhongxian wasn't even considered a student of the academy anymore, it shouldn't matter to him who became the next principal. Naturally, he should have nothing to do with the inauguration ceremony. A bitter smile surfaced on Zhongxian's lips. It just so happened that he did have a role to play in the inauguration ceremony, and a huge one at that. You should quickly make your decision. The scarlet firefly fruit will be maturing in the next few days, so we have to set off as soon as possible, Hu Yarou urged. After a moment of contemplation, Zhongxian proposed, since that's the case, let's set off straight later in the night then. However, instead of riding Dongxin's tamed beast, I suggest that we ride on mine. We should be able to make a round trip within a day with that. He still had to attend the banquet at the royal palace to determine whether the body saint tree could be used to save Wei Ruyan or not before heading out. Considering Dongxin's current cultivation realm, her tamed beast should also be at Chrysalis' realm at the very most, so the speed of travel wouldn't be too fast. However, if they were to ride on Byzantium Lad, they should be able to cover the 3 days' journey within half a day. That would save them quite a bit of time. Your tamed beast? You mean your great violet wing beast? Hu Yarou frowned. But its speed is likely slower than Dongxin's tamed beast, right? Chapter 852, Wu Yangzi's treasure. The great violet-winged beast was only at half chrysalis realm, whereas Dongxin's tamed beast was a chrysalis realm intermediate stage spirit beast. The former might be capable of flying at fast speed, but in terms of overall performance, the latter was definitely superior. Given that Dongxin's tamed beast would require 3 days just to make a one-way trip, do you really believe that your great violet-winged beast could make a roundabout trip in a day? You must be joking. It's settled then. Meet me at Leiyuan Peak at the Z-hour 1 tonight. We will set off from there. Zhongxian noticed the doubtful expression on Hu Yaoiro's face, but since they would understand when the time came, he didn't think that there was any need for him to explain himself. All right then. Seeing that Zhongxian was unwilling to speak, Hu Yaoyaro didn't ask on as well. Turning around, she returned back to the Master Teacher Academy. After she left the manor, Zhongxian didn't rush off to the royal palace to attend the banquet. Instead, he made his way to the ancient pine tree in the courtyard. Since this tree was located beneath the 3 stars of the Earth Dragon, the treasure should be in its vicinity. Activating the Eye of Insight, he began to examine the pine tree carefully. However, despite scrutinizing every inch of it, he was unable to find anything peculiar at all. But that was to be expected. If it could be found that easily, someone else would have claimed the treasure long ago. Wu Yangzi mentioned that I have to put down 3 formation flags according to the 3 stars, and the items will surface automatically. Recalling the words Wu Yangzi had mentioned back then, Zhongxian flicked his wrist and took out 3 formation flags and a night illumination pearl. With a swift leap, he returned to the area where Hu Yaoyaro stood previously and raised his night illumination pearl up high. In an instant, 3 brilliant stars appeared in the 3 ponds scattered around the courtyard. Go! With another flick of his wrist, Zhongxian tossed the formation flags into the air. Su su su. The 3 formation flags fell directly onto the stars in the 3 ponds simultaneously. Wang. With a faint buzz, the ground suddenly started rumbling slightly, as if the Earth Dragon had come to life. Following which, the towering pine tree abruptly burst apart, revealing a medium-sized metal box within. Zhongxian rushed over and grabbed the box. Is this the treasure Wu Yangzi left behind? It sure is well hidden. Zhongxian's eyes lit up in excitement. Even though the box sprung from the pine tree, he could tell that it was actually not hidden within the pine tree but a hidden space inside. In other words, had Zhongxian not found the 3 stars and inserted the 3 formation flags, he wouldn't have been able to find the box even if he were to reduce the pine tree to dust. Studying the pine tree carefully, it seemed like some kind of formation with a function reminiscent of a storage ring was set up around the area, and the center of the formation was where the pine tree was located. This was also the reason why Wu Yangzi's treasure remained unfound even after 2,000 years later. This is a celestial designer mechanical container. After analyzing the tree, Zhongxian turned his attention back to the metal box. Each celestial designer mechanical container was exquisitely built using a unique blueprint designed by a celestial designer. Without an understanding of the structure of the box, it was impossible to unlock it. However, this wasn't a problem for Zhongxian. Muttering flaws, beneath his breath, a book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. He browsed through it quickly before tapping on 16 different points on the box with his finger. Catcher. With a crisp click, a mechanism whirred into action, and the box was opened. The first thing that Zhongxian saw inside the box was a pitch-black ore which was around the size of a fist. It emanated a bone-chilling frigid air. Since you found this box, it can only mean that I have met with some kind of mishap. Along with the whirring of the mechanism, a faint voice sounded in the air. It was Wu Yangzi's voice. You did meet with mishap. Upon thinking about how the number 1 blacksmith of Hongyuan Empire ended up being trapped within an underground cavern till his death, Zhongxian couldn't help but sigh deeply in lamentation. Wu Yangzi thought that he was contributing to mankind by turning those otherworldly demons into puppets and killing them, but the truth was that Vicious was making use of his smithing capability to turn his subordinates into everlasting guards that could protect him until his comeback. Regardless of whether I have passed away or not, the fact that you were able to find my treasure means that there is fate between you and me. Contained in here are my most valuable possessions, so I hope that you can use them wisely. The ore in the box is known as the black gold crystal ore. I had to go to great lengths in order to obtain it. If you were to add even a pinch of it into the weapon you are forging, you will be able to raise its quality up a notch. Black gold crystal ore? This is the black gold crystal ore? Zhong Xian's breathing hastened in agitation. As a 6-star pinnacle blacksmith, he had a deep understanding of the various valuable ores in the world. Of those, the black gold crystal ore was definitely one of the most expensive and rarest ores. Putting everything aside, if he had added a pinch of it into his half-Saint Glacier rain sword during its forging process, he would have been able to successfully raise it to Saint tier. This was how valuable it was. Just a pinch of it could have such miraculous effects, and an entire fist of it was sitting right before him. Its price was inestimable. It would be hard to tell whether one could afford it even with 10,000 high-tier spirit stones on hand. It was no wonder why Wu Yangzi would regard it as one of his most valuable possessions. But of course, an object that only has the effect of raising an artifact's tier can't be considered my greatest treasure. The second item I have left behind here is the manual of my quintuple incandescence golden body, the voice continued. Zhong Xian turned his gaze back to the box, and he saw a secret manual labeled Quintuple Incandescence Golden Body on its cover. As he had already obtained it back in the underground chamber, he wasn't particularly excited to see it. If you have obtained this cultivation technique from me elsewhere, the chances are that the cultivation technique you have received is a fake. This is the only real version of Quintuple Incandescence Golden Body in the world, and only by cultivating this version will you be able to grasp the true essence of the technique. If you were to continue cultivating the other version, your cultivation will eventually go berserk. The voice revealed. The one in the underground chamber is a fake. Astonished, Zhong Xian swiftly picked up the book, and a replica appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. He swiftly looking through the version in the Library of Heaven's Path, and a moment later, he shook his head. The book contained within this box was indeed different from the one Wu Yangzi left in the underground chamber, containing far fewer mistakes in it. However, that made no difference to Zhong Xian. He had already resolved most of the flaws of the quintuple incandescence golden body with his Library of Heaven's Path back in the underground chamber when he first cultivated the technique. In other words, not only was the current version he was cultivating correct, it was even more perfect than the authentic version in the box. To Zhong Xian, it didn't matter how flawed a book was. As long as it contained content that would contribute to the compilation of a perfected Heaven's Path manual, it would be useful to him. Compile. Zhong Xian muttered as he compiled the two versions of Quintuple Incandescence Golden Body together before browsing through it once more. With a swift glance, his eyes lit up. It seems like I will be able to cultivate the third incandescence very soon. Of the Quintuple Incandescence Golden Body he had compiled previously, with the exception of the first incandescence, he required certain items to serve as a catalyst for him to cultivate the subsequent levels. The second incandescence required the earth flame heart, whereas the third incandescence required the origin heavy water. He had learned the price of the origin heavy water by eavesdropping on Hu Yaoiro's conversation. A bottle of it cost 10 high-tier spirit stones, and he would require at least 10 of them to successfully cultivate the third incandescence. In other words, he would require 100 high-tier spirit stones for it. He didn't have the money for that, so he had been putting off the issue so far. However, after compiling the authentic version of the Quintuple Incandescence Golden Body along with the one he currently had, even though he still required origin heavy water to cultivate the third incandescence, the quantity required had decreased significantly. From the initial 10 bottles, he only needed one now. There are some changes to the fourth incandescence and fifth incandescence as well. While the authentic version of the Quintuple Incandescence Golden Body wasn't able to resolve the remaining flaws contained in his current version, it did help to alleviate it by reducing the amount of each item required to cultivate the subsequent levels. It seems like Wu Yangzi was still wary of the otherworldly demons after all. Zhong Xian thought as he kept the manual into his storage ring. It was fortunate that he had borrowed physical body cultivation technique manuals from Luo Chichi, resolved its flaws, and imparted the correct version to Luo Chichi. Otherwise, her cultivation might have very well gone berserk. But thinking about it, Wu Yangzi didn't have any other choice but to remain wary either. Surrounded by otherworldly demons, how could he possibly dare to leave behind a manual of his secret art without any reservations? If the otherworldly demon were to obtain his quintuple incandescence golden body and use it against mankind, wouldn't he become a huge sinner? The final treasure I have left behind is also the most important one of all. It is due to my possession of this that the otherworldly demonic tribe had set their eyes on me. If you are an ordinary cultivator, I hope that you can hand it over to the Master Teacher Pavilion, and if you are a Master Teacher, I hope that you can deal with it carefully. Make sure that it doesn't fall into malicious hands. The voice spoke grimly. Hand it over to the Master Teacher Pavilion? Zhong Xian muttered in confusion as he took out the remaining item in the box. Taking a closer look, it was a piece of goatskin with countless years of history behind it. Resembling a map, it had many labels written in bizarre characters which he had never seen before. What is this? Zhong Xian muttered as he tried to analyze it with the Library of Heaven's Path. While he did manage to compile a book on the map, it only contained details regarding the fabric used. The bizarre characters on it, which seemed to be landmark labels on the map, didn't have any flaws, so they were reflected how they originally were in the book. Unable to derive anything conclusive from the map, Zhong Xian could only keep the goatskin into his storage ring. Even though he couldn't tell what the map was for, given how careful Wu Yangzi was with it and that the otherworldly demons were dying to lay their hands on it, it was definitely an extremely important artifact. If my descendants are still around, I hope that you can treat them kindly. The greatest regret of my life is to have implicated them in the mess that I got involved with. After introducing the three treasures, the voice continued, speaking in a melancholic tone. Zhong Xian could sense Wu Yangzi's conflicted emotions when he was recording this message. The latter seemed to have known that his possession of the map would result in his enemies going after his family as well, but standing in between the welfare of his family and mankind, he had no choice but to choose the latter. Don't worry, your descendant is currently my apprentice. I will take care of her well, Zhong Xian promised solemnly. He had initially taken in Hu Yaoyao as his apprentice to uncover the location of Wu Yangzi's old residence, but after learning of the sacrifices that Wu Yangzi had made for mankind, he felt obliged to repay the favor to Hu Yaoyao. Even if he didn't accept her as his direct disciple, he would at least acknowledge her as his official student and offer her some guidance in her cultivation and supporting occupations. Thank you. As if responding to Zhong Xian's words, the voice spoke these two final words before the whirring of the mechanism faded into silence. There are two problems that I will have to address now. First, what is the map for? Second, why does the otherworldly demonic tribe hope to lay their hands on it for? Zhong Xian thought as he rubbed his glabella. Hu Yaoyoro's concealment of her heritage and Wu Yangzi's wariness, these seemed to be telling him that Hongyuan City wasn't as safe as it seemed. Wait, perhaps Vicious might know a thing or two about it. Such a thought suddenly surfaced in Zhong Xian's mind. The map seemed to be an extremely old relic, and Vicious had lived since the ancient times. Perhaps, he might be able to read those words on the map and deduce what it was for. Just as he was about to bring Vicious and his clone out from the myriad ant hive nest, he suddenly sensed something, and his eyebrows shot up. In the next moment, he saw a beautiful silhouette flitting through the night, headed in his direction. Chapter 853, Banquet. She was Luo Chichi. Upon seeing her, Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. He quickly sent a telepathic message to her. You came at a good time. I have found Elder Wu Yangzi's treasure. Flicking his wrist, he took out the metal box and the three artifacts. Since he had received Wu Yangzi's heritage along with Luo Chichi, and the latter was Wu Yangzi's direct disciple at that, she had the right to know what the treasures were and share possession of them as well. You found it. Stunned, Luo Chichi turned her sight to the items in Zhong Xian's hands. Luo Chichi widened her eyes in disbelief. This is black gold crystal ore? You recognize it? Zhong Xian asked. Due to the sheer rarity of black gold crystal ore, he had never seen it in person before, only learning of its existence from the books. It was due to Wu Yangzi's explanation that he was able to confirm its identity before using the Library of Heaven's Path, and yet, Luo Chichi actually recognized it with a single glance. Could it be that her eye of discernment was beyond his? One must know that even though he might not be the most capable blacksmith in Hongyuan Empire, he was definitely the most knowledgeable one. Even Zhao Bingshu, the head of the blacksmith school, was far from a match for him in terms of knowledge. I have seen some before. However, the piece I saw was only the size of a walnut, and the price was already astronomical. Considering the size of this one, I can hardly even imagine how much it is worth, Luo Chichi exclaimed. You have seen black gold crystal ore before? Zhong Xian was taken aback. Even if the piece she had seen was just the size of a walnut, it was sufficient to show that her background was anything but ordinary. Yuan. Luo Chichi nodded. After which, she turned her sights to the other two objects, and upon seeing the quintuple incandescence golden body, she nodded in realization. You should take the authentic manual for now. I will help to alter it to suit your constitution better when I have the time. After passing the correct quintuple incandescence golden body over to the other party, Zhong Xian turned his gaze to the map and asked, Do you happen to recognize the words on this map? Luo Chichi shook her head. I have never seen such words before. I see. Allow me to keep the map for the time being then. Once I figure out what the map means, I will get back to you and bring you there, Zhong Xian said. As for the black gold crystal ore, I will try to find a way to melt it to forge a weapon for you. Thank you, teacher. Luo Chichi nodded in gratitude. Each of the three items was incredibly valuable, but her teacher didn't hide them from her and take them for himself. That said a great amount about his character. At this moment, Luo Chichi finally recalled her aim for coming over, and she hurriedly said, Oh right, teacher, I am here to invite you to the banquet at the royal palace. Yu Feier had invited her, Zhong Xian, Xing Yuan, and the others to the banquet in the royal palace. Knowing Zhong Xian's personality, she knew that he might attempt to skip the banquet, and she had also heard the news about his manor collapsing as well, so she specially made the journey here to take a look. Knowing that he had to make the trip to the royal palace to take a look at the body saint tree, Zhong Xian nodded. Let's go. Leaving the rubble of the manor, the duo got onto a carriage that Luo Chichi had prepared beforehand and headed to the royal palace. It didn't take them too long to arrive at their destination. Befitting of its status as the center of authority of a Tier 1 empire, Hongyuan Empire's royal palace was enormous. Before the towering gates stood 2 rows of guards, every single one of them possessing the cultivation of transcendent mortal 6-dan cosmos bridge realm. With several hundreds of them gathered in a spot, their presence exerted a huge pressure on those walking between them. Stepping through the palace gates, Zhong Xian noticed all kinds of formations in the area, and even the weakest of them was a grade 6 primary formation. Those who were unfamiliar with the layout of the royal palace would swiftly find themselves trapped within a labyrinth, unable to escape. With traps potentially springing on one with each step, not even a Saint Realm 1-dan expert would dare to casually step into the royal palace. Handing over their invitation letters, a guard led them around the royal palace, and soon, they were standing before a huge palace. This is the place where the banquet is held, Luo Chichi said. At this moment, Zhong Xian suddenly recalled this matter and asked, Right, I forgot to ask. What is the occasion today? Why are we invited to the banquet? Even the royal family couldn't possibly hold such a grand banquet for no good reason. You don't know? Seeing how her teacher came here without even knowing anything at all, Luo Chichi was rendered speechless. You were also there when Yu Feier handed me the invitation letter. She didn't tell me anything, so how could I possibly know? Zhong Xian replied in bewilderment. Luo Chichi slapped her forehead and shook her head. Her teacher was a person of great capability, but his emotional quotient was truly lacking. An esteemed princess of the empire invited you to a banquet. The least you could do was to ask around, find out what the occasion is beforehand, and make preparations accordingly. After all, this is the monarchy of an empire we are talking about. But this, if I hadn't gone to the manor to bring you over, would you still be loitering around the rubble, at a loss of what to do? Today is Yu Feier's birthday banquet, Luo Chichi said. His Majesty has invited the young talents from all over the empire along with her good friends to celebrate this occasion. Birthday banquet. Hearing those words, Zhongxian's eyelids began twitching. That's right. Don't tell me that you didn't even prepare a present. Luo Chichi stared at her teacher with a frustrated look. Am I supposed to prepare one? Zhongxian returned her a blank stare. None of you told me that it would be a birthday banquet. How was I supposed to know that I had to prepare a present? I don't even know what an appropriate gift for a lady would be. How am I supposed to pick one out for her? Besides, I have been busy the entire day, so I wouldn't have had the time to find one either. You. Luo Chichi shook her head, not knowing what she could say to enlighten that blockhead of a teacher she had. Even if you didn't know that it is Yu Fei's birthday, that is a personal invitation from the emperor that you have over there. Shouldn't you prepare some gifts to at least avoid leaving an unfavorable impression? To arrive empty-handed, you are probably the only one who dares do such a thing. Forget it. I have some items here, you can make do with them for the moment. Flicking her wrist, Luo Chichi took out a few items that most ladies would fancy. There was a massive pearl, a hair ornament embedded with precious gems, a fragrance pouch with a unique aroma. They were all fairly expensive accessories. It's fine. If it comes down to it, I will just leave the banquet. Don't worry about it. Zhongxian shook his head. In the first place, he wasn't really interested in the banquet. The main reason he wanted to come to the royal palace was to take a look at the body saint tree and see if it could be used to save Wei Ruyan. If he was going to be snubbed for not bringing a present, there didn't seem much point remaining at the banquet then. Leave the banquet. Luo Chichi frowned, but seeing the serious look on her teacher's face, she could only give up on persuading him otherwise. All right then. As close friends, she knew Yu Fei's personality and temper very well. The latter wasn't one to care about gifts. As long as Zhongshe was present at her birthday banquet, she would be satisfied. Thus, the both of them stepped into the palace and began making their way over to the main hall. The corridor linking the entrance of the palace to the main hall had a particularly tall ceiling that made one feel minuscule in comparison. There were various extravagant ornaments placed along the corridor, which gave it a dignified and regal air. A thick red mat of around half a kai wide stretched from the entrance of the palace all the way to the main hall. There was a pleasantly soft and springy sensation stepping on it. Activating his eye of insight discreetly, Zhongxian took a brief look into the main hall. To his astonishment, he saw countless formations laid out inside the main hall. Some were for defensive purposes and some were for offensive purposes, but most of them were for the sole purpose of fortifying the room. Grade 6 Pinnacle Stabilization Formation, Grade 6 Pinnacle Grand Monolith Formation, Grade 6 Pinnacle Castle Fortification Formation. Why would the main hall of the royal palace require so many fortification formations? Zhongxian wondered in bewilderment. As the center of Hongyuan Empire, the royal palace was constructed by the most capable of craftsmen, so there was little to question about its stability. It wouldn't collapse even in the face of a massive earthquake, so it was baffling to see so many fortification formations in the room. Forget it, it's not like it's any of my business anyway. Zhongxian shook the thought out of his head, deciding not to think deeper into it. He was only there to attend the banquet, so the formations in the area shouldn't matter to him. Chichi, Zhongshe, you are here. Just as they were standing before the entrance of the main hall, they suddenly saw Xing Yuan and Wu Zhen walking over. They were dressed in brand new master-teacher robes, and it seemed like they had specially dressed themselves up for the occasion. There was an air of nobility around them, and they seemed extraordinarily spirited. Has the banquet begun yet? Luo Chichi asked. Not yet. Not all of the guests have arrived yet, Xing Yuan said with a smile. Hearing that, Luo Chichi heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. As an entire group, the four of them stepped into the main hall. The main hall was around 800 square meters large, and it was supported only by the four pillars at the corners. There were countless night illumination pearls embedded in the tall ceiling, making the hall brightly lit as if it was day. After taking a seat, Zhongxian took another look around the room and noticed that there were 8 elegantly dressed young men in their 20s already in the hall. Judging from their movements and gestures, they seemed to be from the upper society. These are the offspring of the empire's nobility, Xing Yuan informed Zhongxian through Zhenqi telepathy. Zhongxian nodded in response. He had expected such a sight when he learned that it was a birthday banquet earlier on. Most likely, the emperor had invited those young men in order to pick out a suitable husband for Yu Fei. With the extended lifespan that transcendent mortal cultivators possessed, it was uncommon for cultivators to marry in their 20s. However, Yu Fei's marriage had political implications. If she could bring in a powerful ally to the royal family earlier on, it could help to further affirm the royal authority. Even though most of these youths weren't students of the Master Teacher Academy, they possessed extraordinary strength. The strongest of them had a cultivation equaling Hu Yaro Yaro, and the others, Chrysalis Realm Pinnacle, a single step away from reaching Half-Saint. To possess such capability in their 20s, they could be considered top-notch geniuses even when placed against the students of the Master Teacher Academy. Xing Yuan, you seem to have quite a few competitors here, Luo Chichi teased. As his good friend, she knew that Xing Yuan was interested in Yu Fei and had been courting her for some time. However, it was a pity that the latter didn't reciprocate his feelings. Xing Yuan's face reddened as he subconsciously shot a glance toward Zhongxian. With an awkward smile, he said, I know that I am not good enough for Yu Fei, so I have already given up those thoughts. He did like Yu Fei, but the latter was uninterested in him. On the other hand, she seemed to possess some inexplicable feelings for Zhongshe. After some consideration, he felt that it would be better for him to give up on this futile pursuit. Putting aside the fact that Zhongxian had saved all of them, his accomplishments in the Master Teacher Academy were also not something he could ever hope to match. On top of that, the other party was also the respected leader of the powerful Shenxian faction. If he really were to attempt to compete with the other party, he just might end up making enemies out of several tens of thousands of students in the Master Teacher Academy as well. How could he possibly match that? I advised you to give up long ago, but you just wouldn't listen. Well, it's still good to see you getting over it, Luo Chichi replied. She knew very well how her close friend viewed Xing Yuan, so she had tried to advise him on the matter several times privately, but the latter had refused to listen. He might have already spent many years courting Yu Fei, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing for him to give up on it now. Xing Yuan, the two people beside you look unfamiliar. Why don't you introduce them to me? Just as they were speaking, they were interrupted by a masculine voice. Following which, a smiling young man in his mid-20s walked over with a wine glass in his hands. That young man had eyes as sharp as lightning, and he carried a dignified disposition fitting of nobility, which seemed to further accentuate his good looks. Of the youths gathered at the banquet, he was the strongest of them all, possessing a cultivation of Chrysalis Realm Pinnacle. Chapter 854, Shenjun. It's young Master Shenjun, I see. Upon seeing the other party, Xing Yuan's face darkened in displeasure. Nevertheless, he still made the introduction. They are students from the Master Teacher Academy as well, the schoolmates of Princess Yu Fei. He is Zhongshe, and she is Luoshe. So, it's Zhongshe and Luoshe. Pleased to meet you, I am Shenjun. The young man clasped his fist and greeted them before raising his wine glass to offer a toast and drinking it in advance. Zhongxian and Luo Chichi also raised their wine glasses and drank in reciprocation. That young man is Shenjun, the young master of the Shen clan, one of the 4 great clans of Hongyuan Empire. Young and talented, he has contributed greatly to the royal court and was conferred the position of a general of the empire. He is currently Xing Yuan's greatest rival, and in their past clashes, Xing Yuan has suffered a fair bit due to him, Wu Zhen discreetly informed Zhongxian after noticing the confused look on his face. 4 great clans? Zhongxian replied. Yuan. Other than the royal family, the strongest powers in Hongyuan Empire are the 4 great clans. Those clans either possess great influence in the royal court or command numerous experts, so even the royal family has to tread carefully around them. Other than the Shen clan, there is also the Xing clan, which Xing Yuan is from, Mai Wu clan, and the Liu clan. In terms of standing, the Shen clan is first, and following closely behind is the Xing clan, and finally the Liu clan and the Wu clan, Wu Zhen said. Hearing that Wu Zhen was from the 4 great clans too, Zhongxian was astonished. So, you are an offspring of the 4 great clans? There was a huge difference between Xing Yuan and Wu Zhen in terms of their disposition and the artifacts they had, so he had always thought that Wu Zhen had come from a humble background. I am an offspring from the branch family of the clan, so naturally, my standing is different from an offspring of the main family like Xing Yuan, Wu Zhen explained awkwardly. Bloodline was viewed to be of the utmost importance in the succession of large clans, resulting in a vast difference in the standing between that of the main family and the branch family. For one, just because Xing Yuan was from the main family, he had a high standing in the clan, and the clan devoted many resources to grooming him. As Wu Zhen and Zhong Xian had communicated telepathically, their exchange might seem long, but it had occurred in just a brief moment. After Shen Zhen put down his wine glass, he turned to Xing Yuan and smiled. I have a request to ask of you all, but I am not sure if it is appropriate to raise it. Since you aren't sure whether it is appropriate to speak of it or not, you might as well keep quiet. Seemingly aware of what Shen Zhen was going to say, Xing Yuan rejected him flatly. Disregarding Xing Yuan as if he was only throwing a tantrum, Shen Zhen began to speak elegantly. From the moment I met the sixth princess when I was 12, I knew that she would become my life goal. So that I can be worthy of her, I have worked hard to achieve the standing and strength I possess today. As master teachers, you should be able to tell how much effort I have put in over the years. Even so, the thought of giving up has never crossed my mind. I knew that this was all necessary if I wanted to be qualified to stand beside her one day. The topic of his speech was his past history with Yu Fei, and the feelings he harbored for her. Upon hearing those words, Xing Yuan's face turned livid. Even though he had made up his mind to give up on courting Yu Fei, how could he let go of those emotions that he had held dearly for many years? To confess his love to Yu Fei before him, it was clear that Shen Zhen was trying to humiliate him. After introducing his history, Shen Zhen requested with a smile. Thus, I intend to propose to take the sixth princess's hand before His Majesty later on, so I would be honored if you can speak on my behalf when that time comes. Speak on your behalf? Dream on. With his teeth clenched tight, Xing Yuan looked as if he was going to explode at any moment. Now, there is no need for you to get mad. I didn't expect to count on you in the first place. Shen Zhen chuckled lightly in response to Xing Yuan's rage. Turning his gaze to Zhong Xian and Luo Chichi, he continued, I hope that the both of you can help me with this matter. Putting aside that, I do hope to become friends with you too. Here is a token of sincerity from me. I hope that you can accept it. After saying those words, Shen Zhen raised his hand and beckoned, and a young man walked up from behind. With a flick of his wrist, he took out 2 jade boxes and placed them on the table. Opening the box, spiritual energy immediately gushed into the air, bringing a refreshing breeze to everyone's face. Astonishingly, there were 2 high-tier spirit stones in each box. To gift them 2 high-tier spirit stones each on their first meeting, Shen Zhen sure was generous. However, this also reflected how extreme his means were. There were no cultivators who could possibly reject high-tier spirit stones, but if they were to accept them, they would no longer be in a good position to voice their objections to Shen Zhen's proposal. As expected of the young master of the Shen clan, he sure knew how to deal with people. You are giving us 4 high-tier spirit stones to speak up on your behalf. Young Master Shen sure is generous. Chichi, since he has offered them to us, it would be impolite for us to turn him down. Take them. Zhong Xian replied enthusiastically with a smile. 4 high-tier spirit stone was a huge sum of money. It would be a huge waste not to take them, especially since the other party was giving them to him for free. Yes. Luo Chichi, of course, knew that her teacher was not one to fall for such cheap trickery like that. The chances were that he already had an idea in mind. Thus, she stepped forward without any hesitation and stowed the high-tier spirit stones into her storage ring. Shen Zhen's mouth twitched for an instant before he swiftly covered it up naturally with a chuckle. Haha, Brother Zhong sure is a straightforward man. We will definitely get along well. His address toward Zhong Xian had changed from Zhong Shi to Brother Zhong, as if to symbolize how close they were, and he shot a provocative glance toward Xing Yuan before returning to his seat. Truthfully, Shen Zhen also didn't expect that Zhong Xian would actually accept the 4 high-tier spirit stones. After all, his loyalty to Xing Yuan was on the line here. Zhongshe. Xing Yuan panicked after watching Zhongshe actually accept Shenjun's high-tier spirit stones despite the latter's provocation. Seeing that Xing Yuan had lost his composure over this matter, Zhongxian calmly pointed out, "There is no need to worry. After all the time you have spent with Yu Fei, do you think that she is the sort of person to bend to mere words?" Those words washed away Xing Yuan's doubts in an instant. If the lady he was interested in could be moved easily with words, he wouldn't have been unsuccessful despite years of effort. Yu Fei was a person with her own thoughts, and she was extremely obstinate about them. Once she had made a decision, even 100 bulls couldn't hope to reverse it. It was also due to this obstinacy that she would rather serve as Zhongshe's maid than accept Xing Yuan's goodwill. How could a person with such a personality be moved by mere words? Since our words won't sway Yu Fei's decision, why should we reject a free gift that he offered us? Zhongxian flashed him a meaningful smile. Even to an offspring of the Shun clan's main family, 4 high-tier spirit stones should still a huge sum. Xing Yuan's eyes widened as realization struck him. His Xing clan didn't pale too much compared to the Shun clan, and his standing in the Xing clan was also nearly equivalent to Shenjun's. Considering how it was difficult for Xing Yuan to access the high-tier spirit stones of the clan with his current standing, even with Shenjun's higher cultivation realm, it was unlikely that his plight would be much better than his own. Thus, despite the generous exterior that Shenjun had put up, his heart was probably bleeding when Luo Chichi stowed the 4 high-tier spirit stones into her storage ring. Most likely, Shenjun was just making use of this opportunity to humiliate Xing Yuan and sow discord among them, but who could have known that Zhongxian would shamelessly accept his spirit stones? Shenjun had already said that those spirit stones were for them, and as the young master of the Shun clan, he would be a laughingstock of the city if he were to go back on his word. Most likely, his heart must be filled with regret and remorse at this very instant. Having understood all of this, Xing Yuan's eyes lit up, and the negative emotions he had accumulated from the encounter with Shenjun earlier dissipated without a trace. Turning his eyes to Zhongshe once more, he couldn't help but feel deep respect and admiration for the other party. And the truth was that Zhongxian was right. Young Master Shen's heart was indeed bleeding at this very instant. He had taken out those 4 high-tier spirit stones to oppress Xing Yuan, but who would have thought that the other party would be so shameless as to accept them? Furthermore, the other party accepted them so candidly, without the slightest hint of hesitation at all. "Are you sure you are Xing Yuan's friends? Where did your loyalty to your friends go?" Just as Shenjun returned to his seat, a young man before him secretly sent a telepathic message to ask, "Brother Shen, who is that fellow?" The young man was an offspring of the Liu clan, one of the 4 great clans as well. Shenjun harumphed coldly. "A greedy fellow." Greedy? Liu Gongzi was baffled by Shenjun's response. Judging from the greedy fellow's clothes, he seemed to be a master teacher. Aren't master teachers upright and incorruptible? How can he be greedy then? The encounter with Shenjun was only a small matter, so Zhongxian didn't pay much heed to it. At this moment, his attention was focused on uncovering the details of the body saint tree and determining if it would be effective at healing Wei Ruyan's soul. Thus, he turned to Xing Yuan and asked, "I heard that there is a body saint tree in the royal palace that has the effect of nourishing one's soul. Is that true? Body saint tree? Now you mention it, I think I have heard of such a matter before." Xing Yuan nodded. As the offspring of the 4 great clans, he was privy to some of the deep secrets in the royal palace. Hearing that Xing Yuan knew of its existence, Zhongxian's eyes lit up as he continued his questioning. "Then, do you know where in the royal palace it is located?" "If I recall correctly, it should be in the emperor's sleeping chamber," Xing Yuan said. "This is a secret of the royal family, so I am not really sure about it either." If it had been someone else, there was no way Xing Yuan would have revealed these secrets so easily. However, he was indebted to Zhongxian for saving his life, and he believed in the latter's integrity as well. "Sleeping chamber?" Zhongxian frowned. He wasn't too sure where the emperor's sleeping chamber was, but it shouldn't be too difficult for him to find it if he were to search thoroughly. The emperor's sleeping chamber must be in the location filled with powerful defensive formations and patrols in order to ward away assassins. As long as he moved in that direction, he should have no problem finding it. I have to find an opportunity for my soul to slip away and take a look around, Zhongxian thought. Given his current cultivation, it would be impossible for him to slip under the radar of the experts in the royal palace and find the emperor's sleeping chamber, unless he were to move as a soul. With the intangible property of a soul, as long as he didn't encounter any Saint Realm experts specializing in the study of souls, he should be able to avoid detection. With this thought in mind, Zhongxian turned to ask the young lady seated beside him, "Chichi, when does the banquet start?" Luo Chichi took a look around the surroundings before replying. "Not all of the guests have gathered yet, so I would estimate around an hour. That's plenty of time. I just had a sudden spurt of inspiration, so I would like to cultivate for a moment. Stand guard for me, don't let anyone interrupt me," Zhongxian instructed. "You want to cultivate here?" Luo Chichi widened her eyes in shock. "We are at a banquet, a place where people drink, sing, and make merry, and you want to cultivate?" Zhongxian nodded. "All right then." Hearing those words, Luo Chichi couldn't help but feel awed by her teacher. With his diligence, it was no wonder her teacher was able to improve so swiftly. There were very few who could go to this extent. "Thank you." Closing his eyes, Zhongxian slipped his soul out of his body. Having studied both demonic tunes and terpsichorean arts, his understanding of souls had deepened. This had granted him the ability to better conceal the presence of his own soul, allowing him to slip away from the main hall without catching anyone's attention. After slipping out of the main hall, he didn't dart around randomly to search aimlessly. Instead, he flew to a greater altitude and activated his Eye of Insight. In an instant, the many formations set up throughout the royal palace appeared right before his eyes. The place with the highest concentration of formations is there. Soon, he narrowed down his search to a certain residence. If it had been before, even in his soul state, he wouldn't have dared to venture into an area filled with grade 6 formations. However, after going through the books in the Formation Master School, there was currently no one in the territory of Hongyuan Empire who could match him in the field of formations. No matter how powerful or profound the formations in the royal palace might be, they were no different from unclothed ladies, their secrets lying bare for him to see. After maneuvering skillfully around numerous sentries, mechanisms, and formations, he soon arrived at the residence. Chapter 855, Thousand Tempering Soul Refinement Art Origin Convergence Formation. Standing on the wall of the residence, Zhongxian frowned. A grade 7 formation? This wasn't the largest residence within the entire royal palace, but it had the most formidable formation of all, a grade 7 formation. A formation of that grade had already surpassed Hongyuan Empire's level. It seems like that is the most important place in the royal palace. The body saint tree must be inside. A glint flashed through Zhongxian's eyes. According to what Zhong Dingchun said, the body saint tree was the foundation to the royal family's power, so it must be very tightly guarded. This residence met that requirement perfectly. Whether it would be able to save Wei Ruyan or not, he would just have to enter and take a look for himself. Zhongxian began studying the grade 7 formation with his Eye of Insight, but a moment later, he shook his head. With my current cultivation, it will take quite some time to decipher a grade 7 formation. It was possible for him to find the life gate and slip in discreetly without alarming anyone, but based on his estimations, he would need at least 2 hours to work it out. Considering the dangers lurking within the royal palace and that the banquet would be starting in an hour's time, he couldn't afford to take that much time. I have no choice then. With a thought, Zhongxian used his soul energy to pick up a tree branch and toss it into the residence. Wang. Like a rock tossed into calm water, the formation immediately whirred into action, and a series of crisp sounds echoed throughout the area. Countless swords flashed across the air, and in an instant, the tree branch was reduced to shreds. It was a powerful slaughter formation. In the moment that the formation activated, Zhongxian immediately muttered softly, "Flaws." The Library of Heaven's Path wasn't able to compile books on formations when they were in their dormant stage. Thus, he had to activate it before he could see the problems with it. A book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path, and Zhongxian swiftly flipped through it. After gaining an understanding of the formation, He immediately headed to the center of the formation and kicked it forcefully. Who? The formation came to an immediate halt. Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhongxian hurriedly made his way into the residence. Other than the slaughter formation set up outside, it didn't seem like there was anything special about the residence. Perhaps due to the banquet, there was not a person in sight. Zhongxian swiftly scanned the entire premises, but the body saint tree was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he found several ancient tombstones. Was I mistaken? Zhongxian frowned. According to the information he had received from Zhongding Chun, the body saint tree was likely to be of the utmost importance to the royal family. However, there was nothing resembling a tree to be found in the courtyard. Perhaps, the safest place wasn't the most tightly guarded place. But assuming that was the case, why would a grade 7 formation be set up there? In order to protect those tombstones? Or could it be that those tombstones were more valuable than the body saint tree? Perplexed, Zhongxian headed to the closest tombstone to take a closer look. Judging from the severe wear and tear, the tombstone was extremely old, possibly having existed for thousands of years. There were several large characters inscribed on it. These words were unlike those of a painter. There wasn't any form of unique intent that could be felt from it. In fact, the handwriting was only an inch away from being classified as hideous. However, for some reason, just by looking at it, Zhongxian felt his soul being drawn in by some kind of inexplicable force. 1000 tempering soul refinement art. These large words were inscribed on the top of the first tombstone. Is this a soul cultivation technique? Zhongxian's eyes lit up in excitement. It was well known that the soul was the hardest to cultivate, and this was especially so after the soul oracles went extinct. It was significantly easier and more effective to cultivate one's zhenqi, so there were very few soul cultivators in the world. As such, there weren't many soul cultivation technique manuals existent in the world. This was also the reason his soul had reached a bottleneck at perfect harmonization realm pinnacle, unable to advance any further. He had come to this residence thinking that he would find the body saint tree, but who could have known that he would stumble upon a soul cultivation technique instead? That might not have been much to others since cultivating one's soul was an arduous process with disproportionate returns, but this was definitely a treasure to him. He had received the transcendent 1 Dan to 9 Dan cultivation techniques of the Soul Oracle from Mo Hunsheng, but there were many flaws in the later portions, making them unsuitable to be cultivated. Perhaps, with this 1000 tempering soul refinement art, he might be able to resolve those flaws. Zhongxian turned his sight to the tombstone, and a book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. After the previous experience at the Saint Ascension platform, he knew that he could replicate written content into the Library of Heaven's Path through his sight even if it wasn't a book. He quickly did the same for the other tombstones before heaving a sigh of relief. As he was still within the royal palace, and danger was lurking around him, this wasn't the place for him to process his newfound knowledge. For the time being, he had to get out of the area as soon as possible. However, just as he was about to leave the residence to continue his search for the body saint tree, a bellow suddenly reverberated across the room. "Who's there?" Following which, an immense might came crushing toward his soul. "This is bad." Alarmed, Zhongxian hurriedly moved away, dodging the attack by a hair's breadth. After which, he turned around and saw a middle-aged man staring at him intently. The middle-aged man seemed to be in his mid-40s, and he was dressed in posh clothes. He harnessed a powerful aura, which commanded subservience from others. In his eyes, Zhongxian could see vortices that seemed to reflect his existence. An expert specializing in souls. Zhongxian's eyes narrowed in alarm. With a swift glance, he could tell that the other party, rather than really seeing him, was able to sense his presence, similar to Wei Ranxue back then. It seemed like it wasn't for no reason that the royal family was able to maintain a tight grasp of power over a country as powerful as Hongyuan Empire. It was filled with experts who could fend off even the elusive soul oracles. Which brazen vermin dares to barge into the royal palace? The middle-aged man harumphed coldly as he sent a punch over. An overwhelming might of a saint wand and pinnacle swiftly tore through space to strike its target. An expert of that caliber was indubitably ranked amid the top power tier in Hongyuan Empire. Flee. Zhong Xian immediately dove out of the residence decisively, knowing that he wouldn't be a match for the middle-aged man. Trying to flee? Do you think that the royal palace is a place where you can come and go as you please? Sensing the presence hiding within the room attempting to flee, the middle-aged man's eyebrows shot up, and he swiftly raised his hand and grabbed firmly. Hong Long. A huge palm print fell from the heaven, sealing all of Zhong Xian's paths of escape. He might not be able to see me, but having cultivated his soul, he is able to sense my presence. If this goes on, I might just lose my life here. Trapped, Zhong Xian's soul tensed anxiously. He was in far greater danger currently than when he had encountered Wei Ranxue previously. At the very least, Wei Ranxue seemed to be trying to apprehend him for investigation back then, so she had held back in her attacks. However, this middle-aged man had gone all out from the start, seemingly determined to vanquish him from the face of the world. Considering that he was an unidentified intruder in a seemingly important area of the royal palace at the current moment, it was natural that the other party would be uneasy. Zhong Xian swiftly moved to dodge the palm strike, but he was still nicked at the edge of his soul, inducing fiery pain upon him. No, this won't do. I won't last long like this. But despite his anxiety, Zhong Xian didn't allow panic to cloud his rationality. Instead, he swiftly analyzed his current circumstances. His soul cultivation was only at perfect harmonization realm pinnacle, and against a Saint Wundan pinnacle opponent, he couldn't possibly hope to stand his ground. But if all he did was evasive maneuvers, he would only be gradually worn thin and die. A glint flashed across Zhong Xian's eyes as an idea surfaced in his head. The slaughter formation. With his current strength, it would be impossible for him to defeat the other party. His only hope lay in the origin convergence formation set up around the residence. Having compiled a book on it in the Library of Heaven's Path, he had gained a clear grasp of the formation's layout and flaws. To escape, he would have to borrow the strength of the formation. Having made up his mind, he immediately darted to the core of the formation. At the same time, the middle-aged man also sent another palm strike at him. With his life on the line, Zhong Xian dared not hesitate. He immediately kicked the core of the formation forcefully. Activate. Hong Long. The halted formation immediately came to life, and an abrupt burst of mist shrouded the middle-aged man in an instant. This is my chance, Zhong Xian thought as he quickly darted out of the residence. Considering that the middle-aged man was able to enter the residence as well, it was likely that he was able to control the formation. In other words, it was only a matter of time before he disabled the formation and came after him. Knowing that he had to get as much distance between him and the middle-aged man as possible, Zhong Xian fled as fast as he could. Damn it! On the other hand, the middle-aged man didn't expect that the intruder would be able to control the formation as well, and he bellowed in frustration. By the time he stepped out of the formation, he was unable to detect the other party's presence anymore. Just what could it be? Standing in the air above the residence, the middle-aged man pondered with a livid expression. The content inscribed on the tombstones was profound, and without proper guidance, it was impossible to comprehend it. As such, he didn't fear the soul cultivation technique being leaked out. However, to be able to enter the royal palace freely and even control their grade 7 formation, this was way too exaggerated. Had he not sensed the formation in the residence being halted and come to investigate the matter, it was unlikely that the intruder would have been found at all. It seems like it's about time to step up the security of the royal palace, the middle-aged man muttered. Regardless of whether the intruder was a saint beast or a human, the only thing he could do now was augment the defenses of the royal palace and eliminate the intruder the next time he struck. That was a close shave. After fleeing some distance away from the residence, Zhong Xian dove into a nearby building to conceal himself and decide on his next move. He could easily see through the flaws of the formation in the building, so he was able to slip through them easily. Having escaped so far, he should already be out of the other party's detection range by now, and he heaved a sigh of relief. The royal palace of Hongyuan Empire sure was impressive. To think that there would be soul experts in the palace as well. But giving the matter some thought, considering that the body saint tree had the ability to nourish souls, the members of the royal family should possess extraordinarily powerful souls. Paired with some soul techniques, even if they were still far from matching up to the soul oracles, they would still be an incredible force to reckon with. It seemed like the search for the body saint tree wouldn't go smoothly after all. Forget it, the banquet should be starting soon. It's about time for me to make my way back now. With his presence exposed, it was likely that the royal palace would tighten its guard on the body saint tree. His safety would be compromised if he were to continue searching for it. Thus, after a moment of hesitation, he decided to return to the banquet for the time being. In any case, Wei Ruyan's condition had been stabilized, so she wouldn't be in danger in the short term. There was no need for him to take such a huge risk at the moment. Thus, he discreetly made his way up to the roof, stared at the countless resplendent buildings and residences that stretched all the way to the horizon, and scratched his head blankly. So, where is the main hall again? Chapter 856, Advancement in Soul Cultivation. Fleeing frantically for his life, he did not have the luxury of choosing his path. Thus, he just moved according to his instincts, heading to wherever it brought him to. To make things worse, the royal palace was massive, and there were many buildings that resembled one another. Staring at the countless buildings in the area, he couldn't help but fall into a daze. To think that the esteemed Principal Zhong of the Master Teacher Academy would actually get lost. If he was in close proximity to his body, he might have still been able to sense it. However, putting aside the fact that he was quite a distance away at the moment, the royal palace was filled with formations and experts, resulting in a multitude of auras permeating the area, making it nigh impossible for him to sense his physical body. Perhaps, he might be able to find his way around if he were to fly to a sufficiently high altitude, but after the previous incident, he knew that there were soul experts around the royal palace. With his presence made known, he couldn't guarantee that there weren't soul experts keeping a lookout over the airspace as well. On top of that, the middle-aged man was likely still looking for him at the moment. He didn't have the confidence to be able to flee from the other party once more. He had been able to catch the other party off guard with the slaughter formation earlier, but such a trick was unlikely to work twice. As long as I head in single direction persistently, I should be able to get out of the royal palace. Unable to find his direction and daring not to fly high, Zhongxian could only resort to the most unsophisticated method in the book. He had once heard that if a person found themselves lost inside a completely dark cave, the best way out was to continue advancing forward along the wall. No matter how deep the cave might be, one should eventually be able to find a way out. This was the very method he had decided to employ. With all of the buildings identical to one another, if he were to attempt to return via his original route, putting aside the fact that he could very well bump into the middle-aged man once more, it was questionable whether he would be able to find the main hall or not. Thus, the best option lying before him was to simply continue advancing in a single direction all the way to the end. The royal palace was large, but he should eventually reach its end. Once he left the royal palace, he should be able to determine his location and find his way back to the palace entrance and the main hall. Alright, this direction then. Having made up his mind, Zhongxian decided on a direction and began to move. As a soul, he could float over the walls easily. As long as he didn't go too high, it shouldn't be easy for the soul experts in the royal palace to sense him. What was troublesome were the formations in the courtyard and the occasional patrols in the area, so he had to move carefully. However, it was fortunate that he possessed the Eye of Insight, and the soul cultivation technique he cultivated was the Heaven's Path Soul Art too, allowing him to conceal his aura. Unless it was a Saint Realm expert specializing in the study of souls, he should be able to bypass most patrols without an issue. After passing by 6 residences, a bizarrely large residence suddenly appeared before him. What is this place? What had caught his eye about the residence was the immense breath isolation formation set up around the area to conceal what was within. Is there some kind of unspeakable secret concealed inside? Or could it be that the body saint tree is in there? The main purpose of the breath isolation formation was to cast a barrier over the auras within, making it impossible for those outside to sense what was inside. For the ground to be protected by a breath isolation formation instead of the usual defensive formations for the other residences, It seemed like there was something really important inside that the royal family was trying to hide. Curious, Zhongxian slipped through the breath isolation formation and began scanning the area. This seems to be some kind of trial grounds. Am I already out of the palace? The first thing he noticed was that there were many strength-measuring rock pillars scattered throughout the courtyard, reminiscent of a training ground. But the royal palace had its own barracks for soldiers to train at. Why would there be so many strength-measuring rock pillars in this large residence? Intrigued, Zhongxian wandered around the residence to take a look, and at the other end, he saw two walls lined side by side to form a narrow alley. Closing in, there seemed to be some sort of inscription on two walls. There are 7 conventional ways that one can cultivate one's soul. First, conception of intention. Second, facing one's negative emotions. Third, there were various pieces of knowledge concerning the soul written on the 2 walls. These are the bare basics to soul cultivation? Zhongxian thought. The content contained on the walls was extremely simplistic, involving only the very basics of soul cultivation. It couldn't even be compared to the soul guiding method, which he had learned from Mo Hunsheng back then. They were only useful to consonant spirit realm cultivators, who had just barely begun to start cultivating their souls. The inscriptions extended from one end of the wall to the other. Reading on, Zhongxian began to inch deeper into the alley. It seems like the cultivation techniques here are slightly more profound, Zhongxian remarked. The knowledge contained on the portion of the wall deeper into the alley was slightly more profound than what he had read earlier on. Even though they still paled greatly in comparison to the cultivation techniques of the soul oracles, there was no doubt that they did have the effect of enhancing one's soul energy if practiced diligently. Staring into the depths of the long alley, Zhongxian curiously wondered, does the content get more and more profound the further one proceeds into the alley? Taking a few more steps in, he realized that the content became even more profound yet again. Perhaps, if he were to travel deep enough, the knowledge there could help to resolve the flaws existing in his Heaven's Path soul art. I still have some time before the banquet begins. Let's do it then. So far, it had only been 10 minutes since he had left the main hall. He could still afford to explore a little longer. Thus, he proceeded forward. The content on the walls did get more and more profound the further he progressed. Even though it was still useless to him, it was at the level where an ordinary cultivator would consider it as a treasure. Why do I feel a slight pressure on my soul? Proceeding slightly deeper, just as the end was in sight, he suddenly realized that there was some kind of force in his surroundings exerting pressure on his soul. However, it was extremely weak. If he wasn't paying any notice to it, he wouldn't have even felt it. Regardless of what it is, I should finish reading through the content on the walls first. Knowing that there were profound soul cultivation techniques ahead of him, Zhongxian proceeded forward without any hesitation. To him, the number of flaws in a soul cultivation technique didn't matter. As long as he could gather a sufficient number of them to form a Heaven's Path soul art, that would be enough. Thus, he took in all of the inscriptions on the wall without discriminating among them. Wherever his gaze fell, the writings inscribed in the area would appear in the library of Heaven's Path in the form of a book. By the time he reached the end of the alley, the complexity of the cultivation technique was already nearing the level of the 1000 tempering soul refinement art. It still wasn't particularly profound, but at the very least, it wasn't as unseemly as those he had seen earlier on. At this point, the truth finally dawned on Zhongxian. From the basics to the advanced, this should be an area where the offspring of the royal family cultivate their soul. The content at the very start of the alley was aimed at those who had just started cultivating their souls, and the profoundness deepened gradually the further one advanced. At the very end, the knowledge had begun to overlap with the stone tablets he had seen earlier. Those who had reached this point should have already achieved a deep understanding of souls, not to his level perhaps, but at least on par with the middle-aged man he had encountered earlier. Considering that these were valuable and rare soul cultivation techniques, it was no wonder the stone tablets he had encountered earlier were guarded by a grade 7 slaughter formation, and this residence was concealed a breath isolation formation. After reading the final writing on the wall, Zhongxian shook his head in disappointment. But still, these soul cultivation techniques are still far too basic. Ordinary cultivators might find these soul cultivation techniques profound, but as one who had inherited the heritage of the soul oracles, they were still too basic. To make an analogy, it was like a college student taking on a junior school student's work. Nevertheless, one thing praiseworthy about it was that even though the cultivation techniques were simple, they were well structured and complete, and it was definitely possible to cultivate a powerful soul expert through it. It must have taken the royal family quite a lot of effort to gather and organize this. Turning his gaze away from the walls, Zhongxian saw an average-sized round door at the end of the alley. Seemingly fortified by some kind of power, it stood tightly shut. He moved over to the door and attempted to push it open, only to find that it wouldn't budge. Humph! With a frown, Zhongxian gathered his soul energy and pushed forcefully. Catcher! The round door was blasted open, revealing a vast hall ahead. Curious, Zhongxian moved into the hall. Hong Long. As soon as Zhongxian entered the premises, he immediately felt a massive force crushing down on his soul, threatening to tear it apart. Humph! Zhongxian immediately drove his Heaven's Path soul art and a golden glow rippled across his soul, significantly reducing the pressure exerted on him. With his discomfort alleviated, he began to scan the room, and he swiftly found the culprit behind the crushing force on his soul: 4 glowing statues. The statues were tall and powerfully built. 2 wielded swords while the remaining 2 wielded massive sabers. They emanated a powerful aura around them that exerted a huge pressure on those who entered the room. Those who were lacking in their soul cultivation might just find their souls dissipating in the face of that immense force. One thing that Zhongxian swiftly noted about the hall after his recovery was that the spiritual energy in the area was extremely concentrated, to the point that it was nearly tangible. It was similar to the sensation he had felt when he first entered the lake eye of the cleansing lake. Wait! This spiritual energy has the property of nourishing souls. Zhongxian's eyes lit up in excitement. As souls tended to be more fragile compared to physical bodies, they needed to be nourished by more soothing spiritual energy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so troubled over Wei Ruyan's illness. But while this spiritual energy can nourish souls, given that Wei Ruyan is still unconscious at the moment, even if I were to bring her here, she wouldn't be able to absorb it either. While the spiritual energy had the ability to nourish souls, Wei Ruyan couldn't absorb and assimilate it into her soul given her lack of consciousness. This was also the reason why Zhongxian eventually chose to transfer her soul to a saint herb to nourish it. But while she is unable to do so, I can. If I can strengthen my soul before treating her, I will be able to raise my chances of saving her. With a stronger soul, he would be able to utilize his means as a soul oracle more effectively, which would be vital in rousing Wei Ruyan's consciousness. I should first see if I can compile the subsequent levels of the Heaven's Path soul art first. With such a thought in mind, Zhongxian immersed his consciousness into the library of Heaven's Path. Compile. With a silent command, he compiled the soul oracle cultivation technique he had obtained from Mo Hunsheng with the numerous books that he had just collected. Flipping it open, Zhongxian's eyes lit up. A perfect ethereal treading realm Heaven's Path soul art. By compiling the 1000 tempering soul refinement art and the other soul cultivation techniques here along with Mo Hunsheng's soul oracle cultivation technique, he had successfully produced the transcendent mortal 8 Dan Heaven's Path soul art. With a dense concentration of spiritual energy optimized for a soul's absorption in the area, this was a good opportunity for him to raise his soul cultivation from perfect harmonization realm pinnacle. Thus, without any hesitation, he immediately sat down. Driving the ethereal treading realm Heaven's Path soul art, his massive soul seemed to have turned into a spirit-gathering formation in an instant. The surrounding spiritual energy was swiftly drawn around him and disappeared into his soul. Gu. Zhongxian's soul cultivation swiftly rose. Hong Long. Before long, with a crisp echo, he had managed to achieve a breakthrough to ethereal treading realm. Ethereal treading realm intermediate stage. Ethereal treading realm advanced stage. Ethereal treading realm pinnacle. Half an hour later, his cultivation had already reached ethereal treading realm pinnacle, and his strength rose to 20 million ding. Great! With the breakthrough in his soul cultivation, his analytical ability had been enhanced, and his spirit had grown even more lively. By the time he looked at his surroundings once more, he realized that he had devoured nearly all of the spiritual energy in the room. The 4 statues before him had also lost their glow, seemingly on the verge of breaking apart after being deprived of their energy source. Chapter 857. Who is the principal? In Hongyuan Royal Palace, 2 young men dressed in lavish clothing were walking side by side. Both of them seemed to be in their early 20s, and their cultivation was both at perfect harmonization realm as well. "Fifth brother, are you challenging the trial today as well?" the younger of the duo asked with a smile. Sixth sister has managed to clear 4 trials after her previous breakthrough. As her elder brother, how can I lose out to her? If I can't match her at the very least, father might just start looking down on me, the man addressed as fifth brother replied with a glint in his eyes. The older of the duo was the 5th prince of Hongyuan Empire, Yu Hong, and the younger was the 8th prince, Yu Zheng. Even the most talented of us siblings, our 3rd brother, only managed to clear the 3rd trial when he was at perfect harmonization realm. Yet, 6th sister managed to clear the 4th trial. She sure is amazing. In fact, it is after hearing about her matter that I came over today to see if I can surpass my previous limit and reach higher ground. Yu Zheng nodded. The 1000 tempering soul passageway works wonders in tempering one's soul, but it also exerts immense pressure on it as well. Without a resilient mind, it could result in loss of consciousness or even a trauma in one's soul. You have been dispatched to guard the borders until recently, so it must have been a long time since you have cultivated your soul. If you find yourself reaching your limit, don't force yourself to continue. You can always try again another time, Yu Hong advised. Don't worry, 5th brother. I might have been guarding the border, but I haven't slacked on my training either. Even if I can't clear the 3rd trial, I think I should still be able to get pretty far, Yu Zheng said confidently. Yu Hong nodded. That's good. Soon, the duo arrived at the alley that Zhongxian had gone through previously. Let's start then. Exchanging glances, the duo stepped into the passageway simultaneously with grim expressions. However, in just a few steps, they could already feel an overwhelming pressure crushing their soul, and their bodies began to sway unsteadily. Cold sweat began flowing down their backs. Hold on. The duo exchanged glances before clenching their teeth and pushing onward. As they ventured deeper into the passageway, their bodies began shaking more and more intensely. Yu Zheng was the first one to cave in. Spurting a mouthful of blood, his body abruptly fell to the ground. Sighing deeply, he said, 5th brother, I can't go on any further. I guess I am still stuck on the 2nd trial for the time being. Good luck. Thanks. Yu Hong squeezed out through his clenched teeth before trudging forward arduously. Inscribed on the walls of the passageway were soul cultivation techniques, but if one wanted to read them, one would have to endure the increasing pressure on their soul from the passageway. Each trial was roughly 5 meters, and there was a total of 9 trials in the passageway. If a perfect harmonization realm could clear the 3rd trial, he could already be considered a talented soul cultivator. A few more steps later, Yu Hong's face paled. His knees caved in, and he fell to the ground as well. Even though he had been diligently cultivating his soul day and night, he was still unable to clear the 3rd trial. I am still too weak. The 2 princes looked at one another and shook their heads in frustration. Hearing that the 6th princess had managed to clear the 4th trial had motivated them to give the 1000 tempering soul passageway another try, but their results still didn't live up to their expectations. This passageway was simply far too difficult. After resting for a moment and feeling the stabbing pain in their heads disappear, they stood up and left the premises. It seems like we are still too weak. I guess the current record holder is still 6th sister, right? Yu Zheng asked. I would think so. Let's go and take a look. Yu Hong nodded. The duo walked up to a wall outside the passageway, and Yu Hong placed his palm on it lightly. This wall was known as the Wall of Records, and it detailed the results of the current record holder of the passageway's challengers. Wang. With a slight buzz, a few words appeared on the Wall of Records. 1st trial, 2 breath. 2 breaths. 6th sister cleared the 1st trial in 2 breaths. That is unbelievable. Yu Zheng widened his eyes in astonishment. That is impossible. Even if she can reach the fourth trial, it shouldn't be possible for her to clear the first trial in 2 breaths. Let's take a look at her result for the second trial. Yu Hong frowned in bewilderment as he swiped his hand on the wall. Wang. Yet another row of words appeared, second trial, 2 breath. 2 breaths again. The duo stared at one another in disbelief. They hurriedly swiped the wall once again. Wang. Third trial, 2 breaths. Fourth trial, 2 breaths. Fifth trial, 2 breaths. Sixth trial, 2 breaths. All the way up to the 9th trial, the recorded challenger had only used 2 breaths. Someone managed to clear the 9th trial, and in 2 breaths for all of them at that. The 2 princes exchanged glances, and they could see sheer horror reflected in the other's eyes. Was this for real? They couldn't even clear the 3rd trial, and yet someone managed to clear all of the 9 trials in 2 breaths each, no more and no less? Was the person strolling instead of challenging the trials? The person who made the existing record didn't leave their name behind, Yu Zheng noted. After a moment of contemplation, Yu Hong said, "Let's call Uncle Bai here. He is in charge of this passageway, so he probably has some way of finding the person who left the record." "All right." The duo left the passageway hurriedly, and not too long later, they returned with a middle-aged man following behind them. If Zhong Xian were there, he would surely be able to recognize the middle-aged man as the Saint Wandan pinnacle expert he had encountered back in the residence filled with stone tablets. "What happened for you two to call me over so anxiously?" Uncle Bai asked with his eyebrows knitted tightly together. He was in the midst of pursuing that intruding soul, and he didn't have time to waste with these 2 princes. "Uncle Bai, did you or my father challenge the 1000 tempering soul passageway in the last 2 days? How do you expect us to break the record you left there?" Yu Hong asked with a bitter smile. "What are you saying? Why would we challenge the 1000 tempering soul passageway?" Uncle Bai replied with a deep frown. He had been spending his time studying the ancient stone tablets in recent years, so how could he have the time to spare to challenge the 1000 tempering soul passageway? This was even more so for Yu Shenqing, the emperor of Hongyuan Empire. With an endless stream of work on his hands, he couldn't possibly find the time to challenge the passageway either. "But, if isn't my father or you, who else could have left that record?" Hearing Uncle Bai deny the matter, Yu Hong hurriedly placed his palm on the wall of records once more. Wang. The records reflected previously appeared again. TT 2 breaths. Uncle Bai's body staggered weakly, and he nearly fainted from shock. "Even with His Majesty's and my cultivation, we can only reach the 8th trial. Furthermore, beyond the 6th trial, every single step made will take us a very long time, and it could easily take up to an hour for us to clear the trial. To succeed in just 2 breaths. Just who could it be?" Uncle Bai was in disbelief as well. The 1000 tempering soul passageway was created by an old ancestor of the Yu clan to challenge the later generations. The pressure emanated by the passageway had the astounding effect of tempering souls, and it was due to this that the Yu clan was reputed for its soul cultivation amid the many Tier 1 empires. Countless outstanding geniuses had emerged in the Yu clan over the years, but still, no one had succeeded in clearing the 9th trial to enter the hall. So how could there be a record reflected for the 9th trial? Not to mention, 2 breaths. If he recalled correctly, there wasn't such a record when Yu Fei challenged the passageway yesterday after coming out of her seclusion. Could it be? Uncle Bai's eyes narrowed as he recalled the soul he had encountered earlier. "No, I have to check the hall." Realizing what could have happened, he quickly circumvented the passageway and headed to the hall lying behind it. As the manager of the 1000 tempering soul passageway, he had the authority to enter the hall even without clearing the passageway itself. Pushing open the door, he rushed into the hall, and what he saw left his eyelids twitching uncontrollably. The dense concentration of spiritual energy that should have been inside the hall had disappeared without a trace, and the 4 ancestral sculptures that were used to temper the souls of later generations had lost their glow. With a touch, voila, the sculptures crumbled to the ground. Damn it! Just who is that fellow? Uncle Bai felt as if he was going insane. Harnessed in this hall was the overwhelming aura of their ancestors, and had he not been the manager of the 1000 tempering soul passageway, he he would have never dared to enter the grounds. Who could the intruder have been to be able to enter the hall and reduce it to such a state? To be able to achieve this feat, just how powerful must his soul be? No, I must report this matter to His Majesty immediately. Alarmed, Uncle Bai hurriedly rushed to the main hall, where Yu Shenqing was. In a majestic assembly room of the royal palace, Yu Shenqing had just finished going through the reports and was currently closing his eyes for a short rest. An old eunuch walked into the room and said, "Reporting to Your Majesty, the Master Teacher Academy has sent a notice saying that the inauguration ceremony for the succeeding principal will be held in 3 days, and they have invited Your Majesty to witness the ceremony." Yuan, understood. Tell them that I will be there. Yu Shenqing nodded. Even though the Master Teacher Academy was located within Hongyuan Empire, in terms of standing and influence, he could be said to be beneath the academy's principal. Upon becoming the principal of the Master Teacher Academy, that person could be said to have become the #1 figure of Hongyuan Empire. Even he, despite being the emperor of Hongyuan Empire, wouldn't dare to treat the principal with the slightest disrespect. The old eunuch nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. Right, did they mention who the succeeding principal will be? Shen Yuqing asked. Your Majesty, they didn't reveal who the succeeding principal will be, but they did mention that Mu She from the headquarters will be overseeing the inauguration ceremony personally, the eunuch replied. Mu She? You are referring to 7-star master teacher Mu Yuan? Yu Shenqing's eyes lit up in agitation. Yes, Your Majesty. If he is going to be overseeing the ceremony personally, the principal must be either Lu Feng or Zhao Bingshu. Send someone in to ask about the identity of the succeeding principal so that we can prepare an appropriate gift in advance. Yu Shenqing waved his hands. Lu Feng and Zhao Bingshu had different main supporting occupations, so their interests differed as well. If it was Lu Feng, they would have to prepare some valuable medicinal herbs. If it was Zhao Bingshu, they would have to prepare some precious ores. The fate of Hongyuan Empire was intricately linked with the Master Teacher Academy. If he could win the favor of the new principal, he might be able to consolidate the royal authority that the Yu clan wielded. The old eunuch frowned. But Your Majesty, since they didn't reveal the identity of the succeeding principal in the notice, I am afraid that we might not be able to receive an answer from them. If the other party didn't reveal to them who the new principal was, it could only mean that they had a reason for doing so. Since that was the case, the result would be the same no matter how many times they asked for it. Yu Shenqing waved his hands casually. Tell them that it is a personal request from me. The school heads should at least give me some leeway. Besides, it's no big deal to learn of the identity of the next principal in advance. As the emperor of Hongyuan Empire, even if his standing couldn't be matched with the principal, he could at least be considered an equal to the 10 great master teachers. If they were to ask under his name, the other party should speak. Yes, Your Majesty, the old eunuch nodded. Right, has Fei'er's birthday banquet begun yet? Yu Shenqing suddenly asked. As Your Majesty is still here, we dare not start the banquet yet. I see. Tell her I will be heading over now, Yu Shenqing said as he stood up from his throne. Right, is that Zhongxian fellow here yet? Reporting to Your Majesty, Zhongshe is currently seated in the main hall. Has he caused any trouble yet? Yu Shenqing asked with a frown. He has been sitting quietly ever since his arrival. He must be lying low, knowing that he is currently in the royal palace. The old eunuch knew that Shen Yuqing was interested in Zhongxian, so he had been keeping an eye out for his affairs. Good. Shen Yuqing nodded. Let's go over to take a look. Thus, he began making his way toward the main hall, where the banquet was held. Chapter 858, Zhongxian, Rejected. I am finally out. After cultivating his soul to the ethereal treading realm, Zhongxian had left the residence and continued moving straight, and soon, he managed to escape from the royal palace. Upon leaving the palace, he scanned his surroundings and swiftly deduced where he was. After which, he suppressed his aura to the bare minimum and swiftly made his way through to the main entrance of the royal palace and then the main hall where the banquet was held. As soon as he entered the main hall, he immediately darted back to his body before heaving a huge sigh of relief. In his short journey, even though he failed to find the body saint tree, he did manage to compile the ethereal treading realm heaven's path soul art, so it wasn't a complete waste of time. Also, he managed to get an insight into the layout and security of the royal palace, especially regarding the existence of soul cultivators in the palace. With this knowledge, he would be able to better plan his movements the next time. Seeing Zhongxian open his eyes, Luo Chichi, who sat beside him, asked, "Teacher, are you done cultivating?" She'd had the scare of her life when her teacher started cultivating. Not only did his breathing stop, even his heartbeat had disappeared as well. If he hadn't told her that he was cultivating in advance, she would have thought that he was already dead. Yuan Zhongxian nodded. "Has the banquet begun yet?" "Not yet, but it should be starting soon." "All of the guests have arrived," replied Luo Chichi. Coincidentally, at that moment, a eunuch outside suddenly announced, "Her Highness has arrived." Everyone swiftly turned their gazes to the doorway, and they saw a beautiful figure slowly making her way in. It was Euphea. She was dressed in a purple dress embedded with innumerable gemstones, and it glowed beautifully beneath the light of the night illumination pearls. She had light makeup on, which further accentuated her beautiful facial features, sending the hearts of men leaping uncontrollably. She was simply too beautiful. "Your Highness." A fiery passion lit up in Shenjun's eyes upon seeing Euphea, and he hurriedly rushed forward to greet her. However, Euphea paid him no heed, walking straight past him. Her beady eyes scanned the hall swiftly, and before long, she found Zhongsha's figure. "Zhongsha, Chichi, you are all here." With a delighted expression, she rushed up to the group excitedly. Even though she had sent an invitation letter to Zhongsha, she wasn't sure whether he would really come. After all, considering the latter's personality, he would probably have no qualms snubbing even the royal family. Thus, upon seeing him, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Fea, you are really beautiful today," Luo Chichi complimented earnestly. In terms of beauty, the both of them could be considered equal, each possessing their own unique charms. However, Euphea had dressed up meticulously today, allowing her to grab the spotlight as soon as she stepped into the room. "Brother Shen, isn't that the greedy fellow you spoke of?" Liu Gongzi asked Shenjun doubtfully. "Didn't you talk to him earlier? Why does it seem like Princess Euphea is more concerned with him than you?" "Humph." Shenjun's expression turned livid. Even without Liu Gongzi pointing it out, he could see it clearly. Privately, he had already viewed Euphea as his woman, and he had been destroying all rivals who dared stand in his path. Even Xing Yuan had been utterly defeated by him, so where did this fellow pop up from? He had thought that that fellow was just an insignificant figure, but from the looks of it now, that wasn't the case. "Sixth Princess, it has been too long since we last met. Knowing that it's your birthday, I specially prepared this for you." Concealing his displeasure in the depths of his heart, he put on a warm smile before walking up to Euphea once more and presented a jade box to her. Wang. A dense concentration of spiritual energy gushed out from within, leaving those standing before it feeling energized and spirited. "This is the inner core of a Saint Wundan water serpent," someone amid the crowd exclaimed in shock. "The inner core of a saint beast. What an incredible gift." Hearing that voice, a commotion broke out in the main hall. Everyone was shocked. Relishing the shocked expressions of the crowd, Shenjun chuckled lightly and explained gleefully, "Indeed, this is the inner core of a Saint Wundan water serpent. I heard that it has the ability to nourish a cultivator's body, and if one wears it frequently, it can help to calm their state of mind and enhance their cultivation speed. As such, I specially made the trip to the depths of the ocean to obtain one for your highness." The water serpent wasn't a member of the dragon tribe, it was only a unique saint beast living in the deep oceans. Nevertheless, its inner core was a highly sought-after artifact due to the incredible properties it possessed. If a cultivator wore it on them often, it could increase their rate of cultivation and strengthen their body. As such, its inner core was easily worth hundreds of high-tier spirit stones. As expected of Shenjun, his hand was indeed amazing. In an instant, the gifts that the others had prepared for the princess seemed to pale in comparison. "Thank you." Euphea also hadn't expected Shenjun to present her with such a valuable gift. Nevertheless, She gracefully took the gift and stowed it in her storage ring. As the princess of Hongyuan Empire, she had seen plenty of treasures in her time. The inner core of a water serpent might be valuable, but it wasn't enough to make her lose her nerve. "It is my pleasure." Seeing Yu Fei accept his present, Shen Jun's lips curled up in delight. He turned his gaze to Zhongxian and asked, "Today is Her Highness's birthday. May I know what gift Brother Zhong has prepared for her?" In an instant, all gazes fell upon Zhongxian. They had also noticed that the princess had walked straight up to this Zhongshe after entering the hall. No matter how slow they were, it was clear that Shen Jun was challenging his love rival. "Me? I didn't prepare one." Zhongxian shook his head. He had only learned that it was Yu Fei's birthday right before stepping into the main hall, so how could he have the time to prepare a gift in advance? He had always been poor, so he couldn't afford a treasure like the other party's Saint Realm Water Serpent's inner core. Besides, even if he had such a treasure in his possession, he also couldn't bring himself to give it to Yu Fei anyway. After all, his relationship with her wasn't as close as with Luo Chichi. Since it was a fact that he had no gift, he might as well admit it candidly. "You didn't prepare one?" Cough cough. Shen Jun had prepared lines in advance to put Zhongxian down as soon as he took out his gift, but upon hearing Zhongxian's words, he nearly choked on his own words. He had thought that by putting down Zhongxian's gift, he could quash the latter's pride while highlighting his own sincerity, but who could have known that the other party hadn't even brought one? The crowd was dumbfounded by the revelation as well. To think that there would be a person who didn't prepare anything while attending the princess's birthday banquet. "Are you sure that you aren't teasing us?" Recovering from his surprise, Shen Jun sneered coldly. "Brother Zhong, your joke isn't funny at all. It is out of sincerity that Her Highness has invited us to her birthday banquet, so it is natural that we should reciprocate with a gift. And yet, you arrived empty-handed. Don't you think that this is greatly disrespectful to Her Highness?" Yu Fei's face darkened upon hearing Shen Jun's words. "Shen Jun, what do you mean by those words? Zhongshe is my guest." Seeing that the princess was speaking up for Zhongxian, Shen Jun felt his blood boiling in rage. "Your Highness, it is your birthday today, and we have all prepared gifts for you. Yet, Zhongshe chose to come empty-handed. It is clear that he is disrespecting you." Yu Fei was just about to say that she hadn't told Zhongxian that it was her birthday banquet when she saw Zhongxian waving his hands casually. Does a gift truly signify respect for a person? Does the value of a gift really signify how much respect one has for another? So, are you implying that the reason Her Highness invited everyone to this banquet is to demand gifts from everyone? Zhongxian asked with a sharp glint in his eyes. "In your eyes, is Her Highness a petty person who pursues little gains?" That is not what I mean." Not expecting the other party to twist his words in such a manner, Shen Jun's complexion turned awful. "What I am saying is that the fact you chose to arrive empty-handed signifies your lack of respect for Her Highness. So, in other words, you are saying that my lack of gift signifies a lack of respect, and your valuable gift signifies a great deal of respect. In the end, aren't you still implying that Her Highness is only interested in the gifts and not the people giving them?" Zhongxian shook his head grimly and said, "To insult Her Highness like that, just what malicious intentions do you have? Stop spouting nonsense. When did I insult Her Highness?" Seeing that Zhongxian was pinning such a huge sin on him, Shen Jun turned to Yu Fei anxiously and said, "Your Highness, don't listen to his words. This isn't what I meant." On the other hand, Luo Chichi, who had been watching the farce from the side, nearly burst into laughter. Her teacher's mouth sure was a formidable weapon. It is one thing for you not to bring a gift to a Fei's birthday banquet, but to think that you can still take pride in it, arguing unabashedly that the other party was insulting Fei by bringing a gift here. The crowd was also dumbstruck by the turn of events. They had all prepared gifts of their own as well, but given the current circumstances, if they were to present them, it would look as if they were implying that the princess was a superficial person who was only interested in material gains. Yet, if they didn't present them, it would seem as if they were being disrespectful. Conflicted, their faces scrunched up tightly as if they were suffering from constipation. Interrupting in Shen Jun's apology, Yu Fei flung her sleeves and harumphed. "All right, That is enough. I have invited everyone here today just to get together. If anyone dares to present me with another present, I will ask you to leave and never return. I, Euphea, will not welcome you in the royal palace. Shunjun's face turned livid, and he clenched his fists tightly together. After going through so much trouble to obtain such a valuable gift, he had thought that he would be able to win the princess's fancy. Who would have thought that not only did his gift not delight her, it even incurred her ire instead? What was this? He had truly made a huge loss this time around. It's all that fellow's fault. Glaring at Zhongxian coldly, Shunjun flung his sleeves furiously and returned to his seat. He was currently in a disadvantageous position. The more he talked, the deeper he would err. As such, he decided to back down silently for the moment. In any case, as long as the fellow remained in Hongyuan City, he would surely be able to find a chance to teach him a lesson in the future. To think that a day would come when he, despite being the successor of the Shun clan and reaching a chrysalis realm pinnacle at such a young age, would suffer such a setback in the hands of a 20-year-old brat. Just the thought of it left him incredibly stifled inside. Shaking his head, Zhongxian ignored the infuriated Shunjun and turned his eyes to Euphea and asked, "Are you currently cultivating your soul?" While he snuck around the royal palace in his soul form earlier, even though he had failed to find the body saint tree, he did notice that the royal family seemed to pay quite a bit of attention to the cultivation of the soul. Since Euphea was a member of royalty as well, she should have dabbled in soul cultivation. "I did cultivate my soul for a while." Euphea nodded as she gazed at Zhongxian doubtfully, unsure of what he was up to. "I learned from Xingyuan earlier that your royal family specializes in soul cultivation, so I spent some time a moment ago to tailor a soul cultivation technique for you. Consider it my birthday gift to you," Zhongxian told her telepathically. He had secretly learned the soul cultivation secret arts of the royal family and devoured an entire hall's worth of spiritual energy dry. Given that he had taken so much from the other party, it was imperative that he returned the favor. "A soul cultivation technique tailored for me? Yuan, I came up with it while musing over the quintessence of demonic tunes and terpsichorean arts. It has a high affinity with your constitution," Zhongxian replied. His inheritance of the Soul Oracle's heritage was a secret that he couldn't reveal, and he couldn't possibly tell the other party that he had secretly learned their soul cultivation secret arts either. Thus, he could only try to cover it by using his high mastery as a demonic tunist and terpsichore as a front. In any case, he stood at the peak for those two occupations in the Master Teacher Academy, so there was no one who was sufficiently qualified to question him. This. After a moment of hesitation, Euphea clenched his teeth and said, "I don't want it." "You don't want it?" Zhongxian was taken aback. Since the cultivation technique was from him, there was no doubt about its prowess. At the very least, it was several times stronger than the 1,000 tempering soul refinement art. Yet, the other party said she didn't want it. To think that an impartation from the principal of the Master Teacher Academy would actually be turned down. What was going on? Chapter 859, Yu Shenqing's suspicions. I am delighted that Zhongshe has specially tailored a cultivation technique for me, but I can't accept it. Euphea shook her head. Zhongxian asked with a frown, "You do understand how valuable a cultivation technique from me is, right? As long as you cultivate it, your soul cultivation will potentially increase manyfold." Those were not empty words. Even if it was a simplified of Heaven's Path soul art, the essence of demonic tunes, terpsichorean arts, and the 1,000 tempering soul refinement art were infused into it. If Euphea were to study it, her soul cultivation would surely rise by leaps and bounds. It would just be a matter of time before she surpassed the emperor or even the middle-aged man from before. "It is precisely because I know that it is valuable that I can't accept it," Euphea said hesitantly. "Why don't I buy it from you instead?" If she were to accept Zhongxian's cultivation technique without giving anything in return, it would be equivalent to acknowledging Zhongxian as her half-teacher. In the Master Teacher Academy, traditions were extremely important, and the order between a teacher and a student had to be respected. If she were to become Zhongxian's student, everything else that she hoped for would become a pipe dream. However, It would be a different matter if she were to purchase it from Zhongxian. Upon Yu Fei's insistence, Zhongxian eventually nodded. All right then. He lifted his forefinger and tapped the other party's forehead. Wang. Yu Fei's body jolted, and a complete set of cultivation techniques emerged in her consciousness. This. With just a single glance, her eyes bulged from their sockets, and she couldn't stop her body from trembling in agitation. The set of cultivation techniques she had just received was simply too profound. It was far stronger than the one she was currently cultivating. This is simply too valuable. I don't think I can afford it. I will report it to my father and have him compensate you duly, Yu Fei hurriedly said with her face flushed. She had thought that no matter how powerful the set of cultivation techniques Zhongxian came up with was, it couldn't possibly be more formidable than the secret arts passed down in their lineage. However, from her very first glance, she realized that before Zhongxian's set of cultivation techniques, her clan's secret arts were nothing at all. Even if she were to hand the secret arts to him, he might not even be willing to spare them a single glance. This was how big the difference was. I'm fine with anything. Zhongxian waved his hands, indicating that he wasn't bothered. Raising his soul cultivation could boost his chances at saving Wei Ruyan, so he had made the decision to absorb the spiritual energy within the mysterious hall in the royal palace. Nevertheless, he felt guilty about the matter, so he had decided to repay the favor by imparting a set of soul cultivation techniques to them. As for how the other party decided to deal with this matter, that was no longer under his control. While they were discussing this matter with one another, Shenjun's face was progressively turning darker and darker, and it looked as if he would explode at any moment. At this very moment, he felt as if a grassy field had sprouted above his head. One as the duo were communicating telepathically, he had no way of telling what they were saying. However, there was a moment when Zhongxian had struck Yu Fei's forehead lightly, and the latter's face had turned red in embarrassment. How could they flirt so openly before him, treating him as if he were invisible? Damn it, damn it. Liu Quan, look into the background of that fellow when we return later. Shun Jun spat through gritted teeth as he crushed the wine cup in his hand with immense force. He had only returned to the capital not too long ago, so he wasn't aware of the recent happenings. On top of that, Zhongxian's full name hadn't been revealed in the introduction, so it was inevitable that he wasn't able to recognize him. All right. Liu Quan nodded. Since he is a student of the Master Teacher Academy as well. When I left earlier, my father told me a new principal will be inaugurated at the Master Teacher Academy in 3 days, and he said that he would take me to watch. We can make use of that opportunity to bring in a few men to pummel that fellow so as to teach him a lesson. That's a good plan. It is decided then. I will bring a few of my men there as well. I swear that I will pummel him until he is forced to crawl on the floor to search for his fallen teeth. Shen Jun sneered viciously. Right after leaving the residence, Uncle Bai headed right for the assembly room where Yu Shenqing should have been. However, when he arrived at the assembly room, a eunuch walked up to him and said, reporting to the 7th king, today is the 6th princess's birthday, so His Majesty has gone to the main hall to attend her banquet. All right, I will head there now. Not daring to waste a single moment, Uncle Bai rushed all the way to the main hall, and finally, at the main hall's entrance, he caught up with the emperor and his entourage. Brother! Uncle Bai hurriedly called out. Mubai, for you to be in such a rush, what's wrong? Yu Shenqing frowned. Uncle Bai's full name was Yu Mubai, and he was the 7th king of Hongyuan Empire, as well as Yu Shenqing's blood-related younger brother. The matter is like this. I went to the stone tablets earlier in order to decipher them. Knowing that this matter was of grave importance, Yu Mubai hurriedly explained everything that he had encountered in detail. You are saying that a soul-like object has appeared in the royal palace, and the soul-tempering hall has been destroyed. On top of that, someone managed to clear the 9th trial of the 1000 tempering soul passageway, using only 2 breaths for each of the trials. Yu Shenqing's body staggered as he shook his head in disbelief. As the emperor of a Tier 1 empire, he had heard of many huge matters throughout his life. Yet, when he heard the other party's account, he felt as if his head was unable to keep up. As the head of the Yu clan, he knew full well how difficult the 1000 tempering soul passageway was. Even with his prowess, in the face of that crushing pressure, he was still unable to clear the 8th trial yet. Someone had managed to clear even the 9th trial in just 2 breaths, and that wasn't all. That person had even rushed into the soul-tempering hall and absorbed all of the spiritual energy contained in the area, causing the ancestral sculptures to shatter. How powerful must that person's soul be? That's right. Yu Mubai nodded as he looked at Yu Shenqing worriedly. Your Majesty, shall we activate the Great Palace Defensive Formation to capture that fellow? The Great Palace Defensive Formation was capable of stopping even Saint 3 Dan experts. Even if the enemy they were facing was intangible, they were certain that they could trap him with it. Yu Shenqing shook his head. That won't do. The moment that we activate the formation, pandemonium could very possibly break out in the royal palace. Furthermore, considering that his presence has been exposed, chances are that he has already gotten away. Unless the Empire was on the brink of destruction, the Great Palace Defensive Formation shouldn't be activated. Otherwise, putting aside the pandemonium in the palace, it could cause huge unrest among the populace as well, knowing that the country was threatened. If so, not even he, as the emperor, could shoulder the responsibility. Besides, until this point, they were still unsure of what they were dealing with. Even if they were to activate the formation and trap that fellow, considering the size of the royal palace, it wouldn't be easy to find him either, considering the limited clues they had. What should we do then? After a moment of contemplation, Yu Shenqing said, increase the number of patrols in the royal palace, and if they find any suspicious individuals, we will send in experts immediately to apprehend that person. All right. Yu Mubai nodded. For the time being, don't tell anyone of this matter. The moment you receive any news, report to me immediately. That will be all. I have to attend Feiyer's birthday banquet now. Yu Shenqing waved his hands. He was enraged that someone had barged into the soul-tempering hall and destroyed their ancestral sculptures as well, but as the emperor of a nation, he couldn't allow his emotions to supersede his rationality. After leaving behind those words, he turned around and continued making his way to the main hall. At that moment, he noticed that the old eunuch beside him had his eyebrows tightly knitted together. If you have any thoughts in mind, feel free to speak. Yu Shenqing said nonchalantly. The old eunuch had been with him for many years now. He knew that on top of being a Saint Realm expert, the old eunuch possessed keen intellect, which allowed him to see through many matters as well. Your Majesty, wherever Zhongsha has gone, pandemonium ensued. Even his manner wasn't spared from his antics. He also happens to be in the royal palace tonight, so could it be possible that he has something to do with that matter? The old eunuch asked. There was simply something bizarre about Zhongshen. Wherever he went, destruction and misfortune seemed to follow right behind. Knowing that he would attend the banquet tonight, they had invited several formation masters in to prevent any accidents from occurring. But who could say for sure that it was foolproof? Take this matter for example, while the main hall had been spared, the soul-tempering hall had been destroyed instead. Could Zhongshen have had something to do with this? Him? Yu Shenqing frowned. The old eunuch's words were groundless and seemingly ridiculous, but when supported by the various rumors regarding Zhongshen that they had heard earlier, this hypothesis wasn't completely illogical. The mess that fellow had caused over the past half a month could leave even his eyebrows twitching uncontrollably. If there was a person who could accomplish what Yu Mubai had just described, that fellow was definitely a huge suspect. But didn't he arrive an hour and a half ago, and he hasn't left his seat since then, right? Yu Shenqing asked. Yes, Your Majesty. However, he was sitting in a daze on his seat for more than an hour in that duration, the eunuch replied. He was sitting in a daze on his seat. That's right, Your Majesty. If what the 7th king said was true, and the intruder is truly a soul, could it be that Zhongshen drew out his soul in the hour that he was in a daze? The eunuch said hesitantly. He drew out his soul? Are you suspecting him of being a soul oracle? Yu Shenqing's face immediately turned livid. Your Majesty, this is just a hypothesis on my part, the old eunuch replied with a lowered head. The soul oracles should have been completely eradicated by the master-teacher pavilion for siding with the otherworldly demonic tribe long ago, so their heritage should have disappeared from the face of the world. As a master-teacher, Zhongxian should know better than to dabble in an occupation like that, Yushengqing said with a deep frown. Actually, Your Majesty, we can uncover the truth with a simple test, the old eunuch said. Yushengqing nodded grimly. Flinging his sleeves, he walked into the main hall with widened strides. Just a moment after he stepped through the doors, he saw his beautiful addressed daughter standing before a certain young man, serving him wine with a bent back. His face immediately turned black. How could there be a fellow so arrogant as to allow his noble daughter to serve him wine? Your Majesty, that person is Zhongxian, Zhongshe, the old eunuch quickly informed him. He is Zhongxian. Yushengqing muttered as he glared at Zhongxian with a wintry gaze. He was already prejudiced against Zhongxian after hearing about everything the latter had made his daughter do when he encountered such a sight. In an instant, rage filled his mind. Feia, what are you doing? Yushengqing rushed forward and stared at his daughter grimly. As a princess, how can you stoop down to serving another wine? The fact that the other party took you in as his maid is a form of insult to you and the royal family. How can you take it for real? Zhongxian is just a mere 4-star master teacher. He might possess some extraordinary means, but he is far from qualified to have you serve him wine. Father, you are here. Upon seeing Yushengqing, Feia hurriedly stood up and bowed in greeting. Shenjun, Liu Quan, Xing Yuan, pays respect to Your Majesty. The others in the room also quickly stood up and bowed. Following the others, Zhongxian also stood up, and after taking a glance at the authoritative middle-aged man before him, he clasped his fist and bowed as well. He might be the succeeding principal of the Master Teacher Academy, which would put his standing above that of the other party, but due to his unique circumstances, it was inconvenient for him to reveal his identity ahead of the inauguration ceremony. Thus, it was still best for him to follow the formalities. You are Zhongxian? Yushengqing asked with a sharp glint in his eyes. Indeed, it is me. Zhongxian nodded in response. Yushengqing assessed Zhongxian for a moment before turning around and heading to the main seat in the hall. While he was dying to test out whether that fellow was a soul oracle or not, as the emperor of the nation, he couldn't possibly make a move directly. Not only would he be stooping beneath his standing, if his assumption proved to be false, he would have no way of accounting for this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion. On top of that, he could incur the hostility of his daughter too. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone for attending my young daughter's birthday banquet. Upon sitting down, Yushengqing scanned the surroundings and chuckled lightly. His movements were casual, but it carried a regal disposition that only emperors commanded. Since today is a joyous occasion, how can we go without music? Luo Fu, summon musician Bai in to play a tune for us. Yes. Understanding the hidden meaning behind Yushengqing's words, the old eunuch nodded and backed out of the room. Musician Bai? Could it be the renowned 6-star demonic tunist guest in the royal palace? It would truly be a great honor to listen to her playing. Upon hearing that musician Bai would be playing for them, everyone's eyes lit up in excitement. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.